Welcome to Holland. We are a big canal system in the south of the country, typical of loads of canals that you find around this part of Europe. So everything that we're going to show you is applicable to the canal near to you. The fish in here, we're told that there might be fish over 50 pounds swimming up and down, but it's a big long stretch. We've got 12 kilometres between locks on this bit, and there's a bit that goes even further than that. So they could literally be anywhere, but that is half the battle. And when you're trying to find them, mate, that's #1 priority, surely, isn't it?
Yeah, well, location is the priority in any type of carp fishing, but it's made much easier on a lake because you can see such a larger amount of water at any one time. On here, you're only ever going to be looking at 2 or 3 acres maximum, so the location is going to be difficult, especially trying to watch at dawn.
But we've already seen 2.
But we've already seen 2, yeah, no, we have, yeah. So maybe it's not that difficult.
Right, okay. So the plan is we'll set up where we've seen the fish, one of us.
Yeah.
Basically me. But we have seen them in 2 different spots up here, haven't we? Yeah.
Cool.
And because there's people fishing, just day fishing up where you're thinking of going, you know, which has got all the stanchions in the water and a bit of weed and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We saw one show there, so it's an obvious place. But you know, there's no point just sitting there waiting for them to go. You're going to go and have a look round here. Yeah,
because I haven't been here before. It'd be nice just to have a little drive up and down the towpath, look out for any obvious features, you know, like clumps of weed, areas of reed beds and stuff where people can't really get to, and hopefully that's somewhere where the carp are likely to pass and maybe stop around for.
Right, okay, so our approach at the moment is we're going to go and find them. The other approach, obviously, is getting them to find us, which is putting loads of bait in. Yeah. And I've done that on. I came here for a little sort of look around a little while ago, and I was able to put bait into places around the bridges, you know, anywhere where there's obstacles in the water. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that as well. But if they're showing out there and fizzing up, it's mad to go anywhere else, isn't it?
Well, especially when the pub's just there, mate.
So we're going to get set up. Daryl's going to go off and see if he can find some more, and we'll keep you posted on how we get on. Well, I haven't even got my 3rd rod out. How about that for location? And I've got a carp on. Can't believe it. Great big canal like this. And I've had a bite already. To be fair, there were a lot of fish here. We saw a couple show. Oh, should concentrate on this really. We saw a couple show. There was a lot of fizzing going on out there, and I've basically cast out 2 rods beyond the fish and then wound back 10 or 15 turns and dropped it in, and then put about 100 small baits out over the top, and half an hour later it's roared off. I'm going to shut up now and try and get him in. Nice mirror. No. shaking. Come on, you old canal carp. Get in that net. Go on, Daniel. Get in that net. Yes, get in! Yes. Wicked, man. Wicked. Feels big.
That feels big.
Feels big.
It's not quite 40, but it's a smidgen under 39.
Wicked, man. Check that out. What a carp. Just under £39. Over the moon to get one so quickly. And what an amazing fish to start our account on this fantastic canal. And I'm going to get the rod back out again, see if we can catch another one. Just shows you location is everything.
Coming, Dan, are you there?
Dan receiving, over.
Oh, never guess what is going on in my swim at the moment, mate.
I've got a 150-foot boat trying to park right next to my carp sack.
Have you had one?
Yeah, mate, in the middle of the night, probably sort of 3 o'clock in the morning, it absolutely bust off. Proper good battle on that, and it's a 32-pound common, mate.
Mate, that is absolutely wicked. 2 30-pounders in the first 24 hours.
Yeah, you couldn't have wrote it, could you? I was a little bit worried about the location on the way out here, thinking it'd be difficult to find them, but yeah, stroke of luck yesterday, and proof in the pudding, find them and you can catch them.
Yeah, man, bit of good news from down here as well. I moved me right-hand rod, leapfrogged the other two this morning at first light because I'd seen some showing down a little bit towards you, and I've had like a proper wildy looking common, probably
18 pounds. So yeah, I'll come down and do your pictures. Really want to see this fish.
and then afterwards you can come up and return the favour.
Okay, mate, that sounds absolutely bob on. Well done, mate.
Cheers, dude. Same to you.
sloping head.
He's wicked. We're 48 hours into our session now, done 2 nights, and didn't catch anything last night. It looked like we were going to be honest. The fish showed out where I'd got the bite from that morning, and I thought something might have happened last night, but it hasn't. And it seems obvious that the fish have either moved off or are now aware of the angling pressure. And I think people don't give enough credence to the line being in the water, the constant recasting. You know, these fish know what anglers are. They've been fished for years. There's half a dozen anglers dotted up and down this stretch almost every day of the week. You know, so they know what anglers are. And to sit in the same spot hoping the fish are going to come back, you know, really is a false economy. So it's time to move on. Last time I was here, I saw quite a few fish in other parts of the canal. I didn't fish for them because it was just a look-in mission. And now basically I'm going to go back to those spots, put some bait in and see if the fish will come right in the edge in that same area, and obviously keep going up and down the canal, keep looking and looking and looking until we find what we saw when we first got here.
One of the things that you're up against when you come to a canal is the limited water that you can watch at any one time. You know, the biggest asset you can have when you're fishing is to look, and if you can see lots of water at any one time, you have the opportunity to watch a higher percentage of that water and have the opportunity to see something. In a canal situation, you're like, once you get out of this marina bit and a bit further down, it's only 70 yards wide, and you can look left and look right, but your angle of view is so limited, and so much can be going on further out of sight. So the real key for location is keeping on your toes, getting walking, getting on the bike, getting in the car, driving about, because just standing in one position is not going to help you.
I think when we first got here, we got bites straight away because the fish were here and they were happy. They were already feeding, there was bubbles coming up, they were showing. You know, we got out with minimum disturbance. I cast past the fish and wound the rod back and dropped it in amongst them. Little tiny 15mm banoffees over the top to make hardly any splash at all, and it worked. And then the following morning, wound the rod in because I'd seen fish to the left of the area rather than the right. Wound the right rod in, put it out amongst the fish again, a few baits over the top, and it went almost straight away. So at the moment, in these warm conditions when the fish are very, very nomadic, I think that seems to be the way. Later on in the year, when it cools down and the fish mass up a bit more, they start harvesting on the natural food sources which are dwindling, then I think the fish will stay in one area for longer and you can build up a bigger hit of fish. But at the moment, the fish are highly nomadic and we need to move with them. From what we've seen of the local anglers, it's no different to the other places that we've fished in Europe and most of the places in the UK, to be honest. People fish through convenience. So if they can park right next to their swim, if it's a great big flat open area, they're the spots that get taken. So we're going to do the complete opposite of that, and we're only going to fish where we see fish. And I know that sounds stupid, but so few people seem to do it. They're not looking for carp, they're looking for a flat area to put their bivvy, and that definitely makes the fishing so much harder. So by using your eyes as your best weapon in fishing, you can get on the fish and get bites far quicker than most other people. Right, smaller, 22.
22?
Yeah.
Decent, that is. That's all right, that is. Go on. Have him down, please. Mate, he's well all right. He's getting bigger by the second. Right now, he's coming. Yes!
Just shy of 30.
We'll check him out. Cracking Dutch Canal Common, 28 pounds, over the moon with him. Came to a rod, cast really close in. I was gonna go out into the middle, but they were coming right under my rod tips. So I flicked it out there, put a few baits around it, and this is the result. Proof in the pudding, the location is everything, simple tactics, and you can have them just like this. The location for this session was firstly based in the harbour around the fish that we saw jumping, you know, and we caught on the opening night, and that's to be expected, you know, sea fish topping, get out there minimal, then quite often you can catch them really quickly. The second day we didn't see anything showing and we caught nothing. We went for a look on the bikes, had a little cycle around, found some fish, you know, got on them again, I had another take, and then the fish were heavily in residence when I moved on the day when I swimmed a new swim. And yeah, we had more bites. And on the day, basically what's happened, on the days when we've not seen many carp in a swim, we've had nothing. And that is just exactly the proof you need that location on a canal is absolutely everything.
Because the canal is so slow flowing in most of the sections, I've started off really just using rigs that I would use on a lake. So everything's been kept simple, but very, very aggressive and very, very effective. So my usual hybrid stiff hook link that I've turned into a D rig, I've stripped a little bit away by the hook so the hook can turn and catch hold that little bit better. That's been really successful for me on other places recently. So I've just employed exactly the same tactics here. And the hook baits that we use everywhere, surprise, surprise, the banoffees and the peaches and cream have both done brilliantly. Those fished over the top of the high impact banoffee is an absolutely winning combination.
My rigs for this session have not really altered at all from the stuff that I would use on a lake to any other water of any description, you know. I'm using a rig that suits the bait that I'm using and is suited to clean bottoms, and the canal has that. You know, it's enabled me to fish with confidence, you know, and that's the key, you know. I can really concentrate on the location. It's enabled for me to just take that side of things out of my mind. You know, I'm using something that I've got 100% confident in. All I have to do is locate the carp, and then the rig as such is just a tool for the job.
I've changed the leads around depending on where I've been fishing. At the very top end where it widened out, I was just using a cog lead, but not in cog style. So it was a flat lead, 3.5 ounce distance, and that was basically to get me out there and to hold bottom when any of the boats came through. And then I adjusted over to a gripper lead later on in the session because I was fishing a narrower bit, and as the big boats came through, it generated a massive amount of backwash, and I was just worried that the rig was going to get moved about.
The baiting strategy has been find them, put out just enough bait for a bite, maybe 30 to 40 boilies. I always think that's a good amount to go in with when you're on fish. Get the leads out, minimal, just a few baits, because, you know, baiting up is just as much disturbance as casting, and I think you only need 30 or 40 to generate some interest.
Our baiting strategy has been simplicity itself, not much different, to be honest, to when Darryl and I fished a big lake in Belgium last year. We're chasing the fish around, so we're only using small baits and we're not putting a lot in at all. We've brought 25 millers because we thought the bream were going to be a real problem. That's a new addition to the high impact range, but if you're putting 25 millers over the top of showing fish, they're just going to do the off. So we've just been skimming out 15 millers, sometimes some 20s, sometimes half baits, but most importantly, hardly any bait at all. So anyone on any budget can fish this kind of place. Your biggest weapon is effort and your eyes. So all the expensive tackle in the world isn't going to make any difference at all if you're not on the fish. So by moving around a lot, keeping on the fish all the time, that's how we've caught them. And just a little sprinkling of bait over the top of a single hook bait is enough to get a bite.
Considering I've never been to this canal, I'm quite pleased with the results we've had. You know, I think Dan's done well, I've done well, but we haven't set the world on fire, you know. You're not gonna, you know, when you've got 12 kilometres of canal that you've never seen before, you're not gonna find enough information during each day to lead you to the big results, you know. And the fish, from what I can see, are very well spread out through the river. As far as what I can do next time to improve on it, obviously we've got an idea of a couple of spots where they like to go because we've seen them in a couple of areas. So obviously we can check these areas again. But I think the real key is to get packed up early in the morning, get everything back into the van and get on the search for throughout the day and try and stay on them every single day.
After that amazing success at the start of the session, catching that truly beautiful carp, just under 39 pounds, I was absolutely blown away. Things tailed off. The next morning I caught another one when the fish was still there. Both times I was casting towards showing fish, casting beyond them, winding back and just dropping it down into where all the bubbles were. And I've carried on following the fish up and down the canal. I've moved 3 times, fished 4 different swims, and one of the other nights I was very close to Darryl and I was on them as well. They were showing there. I can't explain why I didn't catch anything. So from that point of view, I'm disappointed. I feel we've done okay on our first trip to a new canal, but I would have liked to have caught more. Really, I think the amount of times we've been on the fish, we probably could have doubled our catch. But obviously that spurred me on to come back and do more next time. I've got loads of little things in my armoury now that I'm going to bring onto the canal next time. We've started baiting up spots, and most importantly, places where people can't really get to the water's edge. So we'll be creating new swims next time, I guess, if the fish are in that area, and fishing in places where no man has gone before. Really surprised to be attached to another fish. We looked and looked and looked yesterday and just couldn't find anything, and in the end just set up in an area close to where we'd fished before. I couldn't fish exactly where I fished before because a boat was moored up there, so I've come to the other side, incorporated the stage stands in my singles bank stick system. Unfortunately, using a grub screw, oh, it's properly going, this fish. Using a grub screw has meant I can get them into this concrete just in the gaps in between the bricks. And at 7 o'clock in the morning it has roared off. A rod casting at midnight, just 20 banoffees round it and a white banoffee on the end, and it's chugging. Well, I've seen it. It's looks like a low to mid 20 common, giving a proper good account for itself. And at this stage of the fight, it's just important just to take your time, and letting the rod and the reel do the work. Clutches set on these cast-isms, they're just smooth as silk, and means I can't pull too hard. With the fish circling underneath my feet here, the last thing I want to do is pull the hook out. So just being super careful not to put too much pressure on it and just tire it out just over a period of time. Get in!
Nice shoes.
Do you like when it all fits your hands?
Thought they were clogs for a minute.
You're going to have to tell me how to get this out of the water because you've had a bite down here and I've...
Yeah, well, we just get round it, don't we?
Come on, big fella. Oh. How about that for a classic Dutch canal common? £30 on the button. Absolutely chuffed to bits with this one. And never saw a fish. Didn't see one last night, set up in the dark. Never saw them this morning. And it just roared off. And that shows the power of the white banoffees over the top of the banoffee bottom baits. And that all-important D-rig. A wicked start to the session. When you're fishing canals like this in the summertime, you've got to find the fish and you've got to let the fish tell you where you need to be. So you've got to look. We've been spending probably 75% of our time looking, 25% of our time fishing. We've been spending hours and hours and hours riding up and down, driving up and down, looking for fish cruising, which you do see in the hot weather, or looking for fish showing, but that only really happens first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening. So if you turn up in the middle of the day to set up, you're probably not going to find them. So absolutely, your eyes are your best weapon. Well, it was worth waiting all day to choose a swim. Rushing to get rods out before it got dark, because the fish have turned back up in this same area that they were in on our last session, and Darryl and I have jumped in either side of them, and I've sat in other swims all around the canal, miles apart, didn't see anything show, and we sent one of our crew down here, Elliot, who's an angler, to look at this area again. We've not seen anything here during the day, even in the hot weather. There've been no fish cruising, and just as it was getting dark, when everybody else is set up, the bivvies are out and everything else, everyone's made their choice, the fish started showing. There we go, it's a nice carp, that is. That is a really, really nice fish. Come on, fella. One of the big mirrors. It is one of the big mirrors. Get in that net. Get in that net, you big Dutch carp. Yes, get in. Ah, that is a proper big one. Get in. Ah, can't believe it, man. There are only a few big ones in this stretch, and that is one of them. That is a monster. Oh man, this is what carp fishing is all about. Yeah, I'm alright, Oh, it's heavy. Look at that.
Big. That's
Big
big,
man. That's one of the biggest ones in here, isn't it? Gotta be.
Gotta be. Absolute monster. Looks like something at a Harrow.
44 exactly. 20 kilo carp out the canal.
Bomb.
Get in!
It looks much bigger than that.
It does.
Looks like a 48 pounder.
It does, mate. It looks like a 50 pounder in the net.
I'm not looking at kilos, am I?
Mate, 44, bang on. Okay. Check that out. 44 pounds of canal carp. My first 40 pounder from Holland, and an absolutely amazing creature, one I am so proud to catch. 20 kilo carp from the canal. That is a proper achievement. Job done. Right, we're going to put him in the sling. It's only a few hours till it gets light, and show you in all his glory in the morning. Leave it to the last minute and get on the fish. Both Darryl and I are using the rigs that we love to use everywhere. I'm using the D rig, he's on his simple braid, and both have worked, as have those all important high impact banoffee hook baits. I'm blown away. One last look at a proper beast, a proper achievement from a super tough canal. One of the best carp I have ever caught. Check that out, 44 pounds. Yeah, wicked. Mwah. Get in!
Right, well, as you can see, it's blazing hot. Just put that little bit of bait in and they're straight on it. So I'm going to get this rig in the water as quickly as I can.
Well, here's the rig that I've been using over the last couple of sessions, and I'm going to talk you through it. First of all, I've got the white banoffee hook bait. First go-to thing for me when fishing in Europe over boilies. They stand out, nice and slow sinking, so makes them easily picked up and easily spotted. Knotless knotted to a size 4 wide gape X. I've gone for the X and the size 4 just for the added security. You know, sometimes we've been fishing near some structure and snags and stuff, and that just gives me a little security. In this instance, using the 20-pound dark matter braid, I've gone for a 14-turn knotless knot, and that allows for the hair to exit exactly level with the point, and just a 10mm gap between that and the boilie, and I find that just hangs down perfectly, ready to catch the bottom lip. In some instances, I've been using the 30-pound, and in that case, a 12-turn knotless knot, and that again exits just level with the point. The rig itself is 8 to 9 inches long, and I'd maybe make it a little bit longer if the bottom was really soft, like it has been on some occasions here. Hybrid leg clip, my go-to thing for all of my fishing. The main thing about it is the swivel cannot pop out the front, and that makes sure that the lead disengages should it need to. Neat tail rubber popped on the end there, and again, as always, the super supple, ultra heavy dark matter tubing, super easy to thread, and just lays perfectly over the contours of the bottom. Really nice bit of kit. You will notice that I'm using a gripper lead here in this situation, and that's because when the boats come past, you know, you get a little bit of a wash, and there's potential to get dragged off the spot, and these grippers just give you that extra hold on the bottom to stop that happening. You'll see that it's a real simple, very similar to what I used in Belgium last year, and you may think that it looks too simple, you know, to catch big fish, but wherever I've gone, when I've been on them and I thought I should have caught, I always do. And as long as you've got a big bait, like 18 to 20mm, you should suffer no tangles as long as you hit your clip and then feel it down to the bottom. So there you have it, my super simple rig. Take it anywhere and it should do the damage for you. Well, I was just about to say it was all over. In fact, I said it, but I've seen fish swim out of this cage, if you like, of this spawning bay, and just as I was walking back to the car with me hopes in tatters, this one's just ripped off. It's not a big one, but it's going to save the blank this trip and prove that the hard work can pay off. Yes, get in, come on. You got it. We'll check this little fella out. I really thought the chance had gone. I've had that bait blown out, and before that the rig chucked off the spot, and just when all my hope had left me, this little fella come on the other rod, so I'm over the moon with him. And it just goes to show, in the heat of the day, when the boat traffic is at its worst, these little spawning bays, which we are allowed to fish because we had a little ask up and we found out we are, a perfect little stalking spots. And right in the middle of the afternoon, in the blazing sunshine, they can be caught and they're still feeding. there he is. I tell you, at the start of the week with the overcast conditions, it was really hard to find them, but the sun's come out and I've been able to watch them, and there's been a couple of really big fish feeding there. I tell you, if this one was 28, God knows how big the other ones were. Just amazing watching him taking hook bait, seeing his reaction as he felt the lead and then bolting off. Yeah, great fun, great fun. Well, I think putting him back in here will probably kill the chances of those other big ones, but I don't really care. An amazing capture.
Buzzer on, and we are angling. So the hardware I'm using on the canal is picked specifically for this kind of fishing. So the rods, first of all, they're the Mission DF, new ones in the DF range. They're the bottom end of the price point, but they have not scrimped on quality. Fantastic rods, really good recovery, brilliant value for money. These are the 12-foot 3.5s. They're the heaviest ones in the 12-foot range, and I've been punching 4-ounce grippers 90 yards and hitting the clip with 20-pound line on. So they've got a really good recovery for a low-end rod, fantastic action and really good power. And you'll notice in all the fights the rod is hooped right over. It's got a fantastic battle curve, and I basically picked the heaviest one because I'm using heavy line, because I'm going to be using heavy leads. You might as well have more power in the rod, so if you've got to punch it that little bit further, it is there. So that's the Mission DF rod. And then the reels, this is a new reel in my fishing as well. This is the Carsism. It's a brand new reel that's come from Japan. Daiwa are really excited about this one. It's got a Rolls-Royce clutch on it, just ticks along when you're playing a fish. If you set the clutch right, you just let the rod and the reel do the work. The rod's hooped over, you can't pull too hard because the line's coming off the clutch, and they cast like an absolute dream as well. I actually went out with Daryl and Damien casting these against a Basia, and the difference in distance was about 3 or 4 yards. You know, and that's going 130, 140 yards with these reels. And they're loaded with 20-pound touchdown in brown. I've chosen the brown because the water here in the canal is a very muddy brown colour, so it blends in perfectly. And I've chosen 20-pound because you don't know what snags are out there. It's 0.43 diameter, so it's really abrasive stuff. And I've had fights where I've been playing fish through snags and stuff, and it's come through brilliantly. So if you're going to do this sort of fishing, you know, you want to be able to land the biggest fish that you're fishing for. And in this canal, there are several 50-pounders, you know, so you want to have big, strong gear on. So if you do get attached to one, the line doesn't snap. So the 20-pound touchdown is also very low stretch. That's a big part of my fishing, is feeling the lead hit the bottom, and the touchdown exaggerates that feeling from normal mono. So basically I've got it on all my reels in different breaking strains. And if you couple the whole setup together, so you've got that slightly smaller Carsism, which is a bit lighter in weight, you've got these 3.5-pound Mission DFs and the 20-pound touchdown, that is a beautifully balanced set of kit, and it will cope with this sort of fishing, like up to 100 yards, with leads up to 4 or 5 ounces really well. But like in this situation, if you want to flick a 2.5 or a 3-ounce lead quietly into the area, you can do that as well. So it is very versatile. And then moving on to the bank stick system, I'm sure the tackle tarts amongst you have already noticed this one and are wondering where it comes from. This is my design. I've been testing it for years and years. We've not found a manufacturer that can make it good enough to suit how I want to fish with it and all the rigours that we put it through. But finally, we've found the right people. I'm really proud to say that Jag Products are now making this for us. So it's made in the UK to an absolutely fantastic standard, and this is the best set of these that I've ever used. I've fished 4 different sets in testing, and they've all had something about them that hasn't been quite right, and that's why it hasn't come out on the market. But now we're working with Jag, everything is absolutely perfect. Basically, I've got the short ones at the back, longer ones at the front, and they're jacked up, but in different situations I'll be turning it round the other way, so the longer ones are at the back, short ones at the front, the rods are pointing down. At the other end of the canal, where you've got a real big drop to the water and you're using back leads, you want the rods pointing down. In this situation where I'm going up over all these rocks in the edge, you want the rod tips pointing up. So it's very versatile that you can change all of that around and make it super stable. And up the other end there, used a raw plug, tapped it in between the bricks and used the stage stand version of this. So basically you don't use the spike, you don't use the stabiliser, you replace it with a stage stand, and I'm actually able to use that on brick, and it's lovely and stable and it looks absolutely brilliant. So that's my hardware for this kind of fishing. The rods themselves, brilliant for the money, the real super light Rolls-Royce clutches, and the bank stick system could not be sexier. So the move paid off. 10 kilometres from, oh no, it's a mirror. It's a lovely little mirror. 10 kilometres from the old swim to the new swim. Was going to go and fish on my bait because I've been down here and baited up in advance the day before, but I saw the fish here, and the move paid off because we are in. The fish is coming really quickly. It's only a double by the look of it, but now he's doing all his fighting under the rod tip. Oh, in he comes, get in! That is wicked, well chuffed for that. It is dawn on our final morning on the canal, and I'm into another carp. Same rod as roared off a while ago with that beautiful, beautiful zip linear that we've still got in the sling. And it's an area that I've seen the fish showing pretty regularly, and it's no coincidence that it's in between all the barges and it's a difficult place to fish, and it's only because I'm able to get my rods into the concrete here with the singles bank stick system that I'm able to. There he's just caught up with the fish again, just swimming towards me. Yeah, that I'm able to fish in this bit, and as usual, fishing where the fish are showing is producing the takes. Get in, yes, come on. That is wicked, man, wicked. Check this out. Look at that. What an amazing creature. 23 pounds, 12 ounces, the one that came in the dark, the first half of the brace. Just an awesome, awesome carp. If it had just been this one, I would have still been over the moon, but we've got a bigger one to show you. Check that out for a canal common. Look at that. That is amazing, man. 31.25. Fought like a demon. Look at the fins on it. Prehistoric monster. Just absolutely over the moon. This is the rig that's been doing the damage on the canal for me. Very, very similar to what I use on lakes because basically there's almost no flow here. So to start off with the hook bait, this is a Banoffee 20mm slow sinker. Catches absolutely everywhere, this one. Haven't taken it to a lake where it hasn't done the business. I've been using the peaches and cream slow sinkers as well, and the important thing is the colour and also the fact that they've got some buoyancy to them, so the hook will lay flat on the bottom and the bait will just hover above. So when the fish comes along and sucks it in, it goes into their mouth that little bit easier. And I think these white ones look like one of the Banoffee freebies that's been out there quite a long while and has washed out, but has still got a really good smell to it. So that's the hook bait. Moving down onto the hook, it's a size 2 curved shank. My favourite pattern of hook, a straight point that catches hold really, really quickly. And a size 2 just matches the size of that bait perfectly. I like using big hooks when I'm fishing in these kind of situations. You've got big fish, you're having to play them really hard at times. I want a big, strong hook on the end. And I think a big hook catches hold in the fish's mouth faster than a small hook. You can imagine a size 8 like rattling around and not really touching the flesh. These ones are nailing them every single time. So that is tied onto a hook link, which is basically a combi link. This is hybrid stiff, so it's a braided core with a very stiff outer. It's my favourite sort of coated hook link, and I've basically done it D-rig style. So it's similar to the IQ D-rig, but the reason I'm not using IQ is because it can be snaggy out there, and if you use a mono, that gets cut that bit more easily than having a braided core with a coating on the outside. So if you're going to fish in snaggy conditions and you want to use a D-rig, the hybrid stiff is the one I recommend. So to tie it, basically just using my favourite whipping knot, just 4 turns of that. So basically you make a big loop underneath the hook. With the front of the loop, you whip up towards the eye once, then you whip again, crossing over, and then 3 times down towards the point, and then the little tag end pulls it all tight, and that is the whipping knot done. You know, that basically forms the start of your D. Cut the tag end off, and then basically put a micro rig swivel on. That pulls up really nicely inside the bait. It's just the right size to hold it nice and tight. And basically that slid on, and then I'll do the knotless knot. Very, very simple. Make sure you turn away from the join between the shank of the hook and the eye of the hook, so you're not pulling the material into where the two join together. So 4 or 5 turns of that, back through the eye towards the point, and just pull it super tight. And then what I'm doing is I'm skin off about 1 inch underneath the hook. So I'm leaving a little tiny bit out of the eye, still coated, and then using a stripper, I'm stripping about 1 inch back, pulling the rest of it off with my teeth. So I've basically got a hinge at that point, and that allows the hook to turn and catch hold that bit more aggressively. Now what I've noticed, I've used this straight through a lot, so hybrid striff all the way through to the hook, no breaking it at all, and I've had the odd hook pull. So recently I've started stripping a bit away near the hook, and I'm getting absolutely banging hook holds. So over the top of that, I've put a bit of the medium-sized shrink tube that goes onto the eye of the hook really easily and shrinks down really, really small. And all that does is helps the hook kick over and catch hold when the hook link is tightened. And the hook holes we've been getting here have been absolutely amazing. The fish are just nailed every single time, and you need to know that when you're playing them as hard as we have to sometimes. The hook link itself is about 7 inches long. I've actually noticed over the sessions I've shortened everything down, and I'm getting more bites on shorter hook links than I am on long hook links. And if you think these fish are fished for pretty much every day of the year, they know what rigs are. If you've got a rig that's just the right length and it turns and catches hold straight away, you're going to hook more fish. And then at the swivel end there, at the leg clip end, we've got basically a hybrid leg clip with a ring swivel on it. And this is something I've got from Daryl's fishing. You always see him using these, and he's always tying to that ring of that ring swivel, and he never gets tangles. So I've come away from a quick change system and gone over to that to replicate what Daryl's doing. And you watch him when he's casting 60 yards or 150 yards with a braided hook link, it just never tangles. And I've attached that to the lead system, basically using a crimp. The hybrid stiff is the only coated material that you can actually crimp and get a higher breaking strain. If you do it in end trap soft or end trap semi-stiff, it won't actually cut the material, but what it will do is it will allow the coating to strip off when you put it under tension, and you'll only get about 10 pounds breaking strain out of it. This one we've tested rigorously, and if you crimp it properly, a 20-pound material turns into a 28-pound material. So it suits this material really well. Basically, to do that, the crimp is double barreled, so you go through one barrel, round the ring of the ring swivel, back through the other barrel, pull it up super tight, and then just put it in the jaws of the crimp tool, lay it in so it fits into one of the little grooves perfectly, squeeze it down super tight, and it's done. So very, very simple. And the lead system, again, copying what Darryl does, I'm using a hybrid lead clip so that you know if the lead gets caught in anything, it's actually going to come off. And it's been really helpful in this situation on the canal because we're moving around a hell of a lot and we're changing lead style and lead size to suit the fishing that we're doing. So when I caught that amazing 44-pounder, I was only using a 2.5-ounce flat pear lead because we were just dinking them out there amongst the fish, putting very small amounts of bait out so as not to scare them away. In this situation, I'm having it cast 90 yards, so basically I've gone over to a cog lead, one of the flat ones, not fish cog style, so this is the cog distance in 3.5, and that's getting me that 90 yards, hitting the clip and feeling it down perfectly, and it's not moving around with the swell of the boats, it's just staying put. So that's working in that situation. And then if there's loads of flow, which in other bits of the canal we are finding there's more flow, I'm moving over to a gripper lead, a 3-ounce if there's not a lot of flow and we're casting to showing fish, or a 4-ounce if there's loads of flow. And a gripper will basically hold the bottom an ounce or two more than a standard lead. So a 4-ounce gripper is like having a 6-ounce round lead on. So if you've got flow where you're fishing, a gripper is absolutely the way to go. So having that hybrid lead clip means we can take the leads on and off, we can take them off completely in transit so we're not smashing the rods around, and it just makes the whole thing so versatile. And then just to finish that off, you've got a rubber connector on the back of it, and then the all-important dark matter rig tube into the end of there. My absolute favourite rig tube, threads so easily, really, really supple, so it picks up the contours of the bottom, and super heavy as well. And I'm not using like 5-6 foot of it, just about 18 inches, something like that, so that the hook link can't get round the main line on the cast, and that is it. So that's the rig that's been doing the business here. Like I say, we're changing things around to suit how much flow and whether the fish are close to us or not. But if you want something that's versatile and you can fish on virtually any canal, that is what I recommend. And then to show you the sort of the next step up, if I was fishing one of these really, really difficult canals where the fish are coming across your rigs all the time, they're very, very riggy, I would move over to this. So this is basically a cog lead, which basically means centre of gravity. So you're picking the lead up from the middle of the lead. And I have used it here when I've been casting down to showing fish and I'm not fishing at very long distance. I've been using this, but if you wanted to go real extreme distance, this does cut it down a bit. But if you're fishing really close in, I know a lot of the guys on the Albert Canal, they're fishing really close in and just dropping the rigs in, literally lowering them off the rod tip. One of these in like a 5, 6 or even 8 ounce is so much more efficient at hooking the fish than the standard lead system because there's just no play. As soon as the fish picks that up, it's picking the whole weight up instantly. And again, just fished on a normal lead clip and then a rubber and your dark matter rig tube exactly the same. The hook link is exactly the same, hybrid stiff, a little bit stripped away, and a size 2 curve with a D. So all of that remains exactly the same. But if you're fishing for riggy carp and you're either going out in the boat or using a remote control boat or just dropping the rig in, the cog is absolutely the way to go.
Well, last night I was stalking into that bay until well after dark, but no more fish were coming. In the end, I decided to come onto the main canal just outside the entrance, hopefully pick up any traffic of any carp sort of coming back into the bay this morning. And sure enough, this little fella has picked it up. I literally cast out 20 yards down either margin and threw 20 or 30 boilies round it. And this is the result, this little fella here. Get in. So there you have it, the perfect end to my lovely experience here on the Dutch Canal. Awesome, awesome stuff.
Nice mirror, come on. Pulling up right under the boat. Come on, yes, come this way. Yes, got him! Come on! Oh, man. 3 in the morning, get in!
If I lived close to the canal, I would be here all the time. There's no substitute for looking and seeing how the place is living and breathing, seeing where fish are showing, seeing where they're getting caught from. You know, it puts you so much in front of everyone else if you can spend time here regularly. And of course, when I'm doing that, I would be baiting up, just like all the locals do. I'd bait up with 25 millers, so I know that definitely the carp would be eating them. And I would start off by spreading bait all up and down the canal.
A canal to a lake, they're totally different ball games. It's almost a different sport, you know. On a lake, quite often you can see so much water, acres and acres. A fish could show 200 yards away from you, straight in front, opposite you, and you could move around and get onto it. On a canal, if it shows 200 yards to your left or 200 yards to your right, quite often you can't see, you know, the reeds, the bankside cover are getting in the way. So I would recommend getting out on the bike and only set up when you see fish, or if you're going to do the night anyway, leave it until right last knockings.
The major difference between a lake and a canal is the distance the fish can travel away from you once you've spooked them. And we found that you need to be changing swims all the time. You know, I've moved 10 kilometres from where I caught the 44 pounder up to this area and caught 3 more fish. So it makes it hard because you can only see a small section at a time. So you have to do loads of driving around, loads of cycling around, and having a bike is an absolute edge. And if I fished a canal anywhere in the world, I would always take the bike with me.
A lot of people on canals use pre-baiting to try and hold fish in an area, and that is a great way and an effective way. But if you're only fishing occasional short sessions and you can't get to the canal, you know, you don't need a lot of bait to catch fish. We've gone in with just a few handfuls, you know, 40 to 80 baits around each rod, and if you're on the fish, that's more than enough. But it will obviously help you if you can pre-bait.
I would always use a bait that I'm confident with from other sessions, so if it works on a lake or a different canal or a different river, use it here. Personally, I would avoid fish meals here because of the bream, and if you're going to bait up in advance, you're going to pre-bait, then I would use big baits, 25 millers, so you know the bream can't eat them and they're going to sit out there till a carp comes along. We've been using the banoffee here from the high impact range, which has performed brilliantly. You know, we've noticed when we've had fish in retention slings that it's been coming out the back end of the fish, so they're obviously eating it, but it's mostly about confidence. We've caught loads of fish on high impact before, we know it works, so that's what we've brought here, and if you do the same, you'll be successful too.
People ask me about rigs. They always say, what rig should I be using in this situation and what rig should I use in that situation? What I would recommend is use what you are confident in, but make sure it's sturdy. So if you usually use size 8s and 15 millers, you might want to use bigger baits, bigger hooks, A, to stop the bream, but also to give you that extra security when you really hook a big one. When fishing a canal, I would suggest you use as thick as line as possible. You don't need to cast very far, so a 0.40, 15 pound, or even a 0.43, 20 pound, you know. You're gonna encounter snags, often like mussels that are up against like the sides of the canals are very, very sharp. So always fish as tough as you can because you never know when you're gonna hook that fish of a lifetime.
Rigs for the canal can be very similar to what you would fish on a lake. Because we've been backleading the whole time, we've been using quite short hook links. And the reason for that is if you backlead, you're pinning the line to the bottom so the fish haven't got to come in contact with the line when they feed around the rig. If you're fishing bowstring tight lines with the rods up, and there's a bit of flow, I always like to use a longer hook link. So in a river situation, maybe 10, 12 inches, so that the fish can get to the bait without it coming into contact with the anti-tangle system.
In the winter, the location on the canal is going to change drastically. You know, in the summer, I said they're in small groups. In the winter, I imagine they're in much bigger groups. So what I would do is look around for the wider sections of the canal, the deeper water, possibly with cover from boats, like at the lock here. And in those sort of situations, I imagine they'll be huddled up.
Okay, big fella, up you come. What a way to end our canal masterclass. The same carp I caught at the very start of the journey, just about a pound down, 37.12. What an amazing creature. It's mad to catch the same one twice, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, mental from the same area. Maybe he lives under that boat called Carpio.
Yeah, maybe he does. So what do you reckon, what's next for us?
Well, I think maybe we should tackle one of the hardcore Belgian canals, the ones that are prestige and history are meant to be really, really hard.
Yeah, let's do it, shall we?
Yeah, why not?
Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you in Belgium. Last bobbin on, buzzer up, and we are angling. Welcome to the Pop-Up Rigs Masterclass. Myself and the other members of Team Korda are going to talk you through pop-up rigs, where to use them and how to tie them. But to be honest, it's taken me about 20 casts to get these 3 rods out in this horrendous crosswind, so I think I deserve a cup of tea. And once I've had that, I'm going to show you my favourite pop-up rig. So my favourite pop-up rig over the last few years has been the hinge stiff rig. I used to use the chod rig a lot, and I found that when it got overused, fish were working it out, you were dropping fish on it or not getting takes at all. I moved over to this and started catching them again. Chod rig's brilliant when it's first used, but because there's not a lot of movement in it, I think the fish do suss it out. This one is basically a chod rig, but just with a boom on the end of it, so that there is more movement in that hook bait. One of the other things about this rig, similar to the chod rig, is it hardly ever tangles. At the moment, I'm blasting it out there over 100 yards in a horrible crosswind, hitting the clip really hard, and it is not tangling. And you can't say that for many other rigs in that sort of situation. It incorporates a lot of stiff materials, which means it reacts really quickly in the fish's mouth, and it also hooks them really well. It's one of the great things about pop-up rigs in general. The hook ends up being in the middle of the bottom lip of the fish, you know, and when you catch them on pop-up rigs, they very, very rarely fall off. So if you're having problems with losing fish, moving over to something like this might cure that. So to talk to you about how I tie it, this particular one, I'm using a small hook. This is the same as the setup that I use in the spring. I'm using small hook baits, which haven't got that much buoyancy to them, so I'm using a small hook, so it all sits off the bottom really well. So to tie it, first of all, I tie the upright section, and that is tied out of a material called mouth trap. Now, it's a very, very stiff monofilament material. Once you've worked with it for a little while, it becomes just as easy to tie as any other hook link material. So first of all, I tie just a 2-turn half blood knot in that material onto a size 11 ring swivel. Pull that really tight, cut the tag end off really short,
and then I tie the hook on, and that allows me to get the upright section as long or as short as I want. I mean, this one's pretty short. I like fishing them quite close to the bottom, especially in this situation where I'm putting a few boilies out as well. If you were tying it the other way round and tying the hook on first, you would find it very, very difficult to get it as short as that. So once that swivel's tied on, I thread the line through the eye of the hook, and then I make a big loop underneath the hook. This is my whipping knot that I tie most of my hooks on with. With the front of that loop, I wrap it around the hook once, going up the hook, and then wrap it around again, going down the hook towards the eye. Carry on wrapping round, so I go around 5 times, and then the tiny little tag end at the top of the hook, basically that gets pulled tight, and that's what tightens the knot down. I then wet everything and pull it really, really tight, and then slide it back down the shank of the hook so it sits against the eye like it is now. I then cut off that tag end, thread a medium-sized rig ring onto it, and then poke it back through the eye of the hook. And that's the other advantage of this particular knot. With the knotless knot, you'd have to go through the eye of that hook 3 times. With this one, you only have to go through it twice. So it's much, much easier to get that tag end bent round, rig ring on, poke it through the eye of the hook, cut it really short, and then burn it with a lighter, and that's what forms the D on the back of the hook. And the reason this one hooks them so well, I think, is because the bait and the hook are really close together, but there is still some movement there. The bait's not getting in the way of the hook when it turns and catches hold. So moving down from that, you'll see that the boom section is made out of a stiff coated material. This is hybrid stiff, my favourite coated material ever. I use it for bottom baits and pop-ups as well. The beauty of it in this situation is that you can crimp it. So I'm basically using the small size crimp, a 0.6mm crimp. That material only just goes through it, and that makes it really, really strong. It's actually stronger than tying a knot in it. It doesn't work in the softer material. So N-trap soft, N-trap semi-stiff, those two don't work. They don't break, but it actually strips the coating off when you put it under tension. This hybrid stiff is so tough on the outside that that doesn't happen. And in this, if you're going to tighten a knot, it breaks at 20 pound. With a crimp, it breaks at over 30 pound. So it's very, very simple to do and very strong as well. So once you've poked it through one barrel, go through the ring swivel, back through the other barrel, pull it up really tight. That's really important. That creates loads of friction and makes it stronger. And then squeeze down with the crimping tool and make sure it's squeezed down evenly all the way along. And you can test it with a rig tool as well if you want. Pull it really, really tight. If it's going to go, it'll go straight away if you've got it wrong. If you've got it right, you just won't be able to break it in your hands. And then moving down to the other end, I've done exactly the same thing. Through the double barrel crimp once, round the ring swivel, back through again, crimp it down really tight with it pulled up really tight to the swivel, and that's it. Pretty much the rig is done. At the end underneath the hook, I've got my counterbalance, which is dark matter putty, wrapped around the crimp. Yeah, so it's very, very sticky, that putty. I've just moulded it around, and I've got just enough on there so that the bait sinks pretty quickly. In this situation, it's very windy. I don't want the bait flying around if there is any water movement out there. And also, you know, I'll put bait out in the swim. The fish are going to be moving around reasonably quickly at this time of the year. I don't want it wafting up everywhere. In the spring, I might basically balance it so it's only just sinking. The fish are very lethargic then. There's no other bait in the swim to get them going and get them moving around quick. And then you want the hook bait to fly up into their mouth really easily. But most of the time, as a default setting for me, I have that pop-up sinking quite quickly. Now, to make it look lovely and pretty like this, I've basically steamed it. I've used a solar rig comb, which is a brilliant bit of kit, put the hook into that rig comb, put it over the steam, and that achieves that lovely little curve in it. So it's basically acting like a bent hook without any of the problems of a bent hook. So it turns and catches hold really quickly. And then I've steamed the hook link straight, basically, so when it goes down onto the bottom, it sits out perfectly like that. And that also helps reduce tangles. If it gets kinked when you're fishing, just steam it again, or if it's all straight in your rig box and you want to use it, put it in the rig cone, steam it again, and it will sit absolutely perfectly like that. And finally, just to talk to you about the lead system that I've got with it. This is basically the new heli-safe system, so I'll be dumping the lead if I get a take. That is fished on the end of a lead core leader, so I've basically tied that myself. I've spliced it at either end, and basically to splice it, you pull out a few inches of the lead wire, then you just tap the end of the lead core just to find out where the lead finish is, go through with a very fine needle with a gate latch on it, pull everything back through again, and I've done that on one end with that heli-safe system and done it on the other end as well with just a loop. And then I've pulled on that little fella in the middle there. That's basically a no trace bead, so it's like a tapered sleeve that you pull on. You have to wet it to pull it on to get it on properly. It does tend to bunch up, but then once you've wet it and pulled it down, you can open it out again and get it nice and straight like that, nice and tapered. And then in this case, I've got it about 4 or 5 inches up from the lead, and that's because I think the lead is plummeting into the silt out there. It's quite soft on the bottom, so having it that far up, it means that when I cast out, the hook link hits the bead, the lead can drop into the silt and present everything on top. And then that no trace bead, basically if I'm unlucky enough to lose the fish and the line breaks, that will pop off and the fish can get away from the lead. So that is the helicopter rig system that I'm using. I fish it like this in weed as well. Sometimes I'll have the bead right up the top of the lead core so the lead can plummet down into the weed and leave the bait sitting above it. In this situation, you only need to separate the two by a few inches. And then finally, the main advantages of a lead core leader, because the lead's on the end of the line, it casts better than any other rig. That's why sea anglers use this kind of system. It also means that you feel the lead hit the bottom better because it's on the end of the line. Very versatile because you can change the weight of the lead really quickly. And with this heli-safe system, you can decide to drop the lead or not. If it's very, very weedy out there, I'd want to be losing the lead and getting the fish up in the water. But altogether, an absolutely brilliantly streamlined system. Very, very easy to tie. The whole thing comes ready tied if you don't want to tie it yourself. If you're going to fish pop-ups over the top of boilies or as a single hook bait, that's my #1 choice.
Play around with your rigs and watch how they perform in the edge, and that's a big part of my pop-up fishing. I'll never cast a rig out without checking it in the margin, and certain rigs you want your pop-up to do a different job. So with a chod rig, I have them anchored quite hard to the deck, and with a hinge rig, I have it sinking really, really slowly, and basically they're doing different things there, and unless you play around in the margins, adding putty, taking away putty, you're never going to understand how your rigs are performing, why they're working well for you and why they're not. And once you've got that understanding, you've got the way, you know, you've got something you like, you understand why your rig's doing what it's doing, it will definitely catch you more fish.
If you're going to cast a pop-up rig into heavy weed, then I recommend you fold a bit of dissolving foam around the hook before you cast out. It will cut your casting down a little bit, but it's well worth doing because it holds the hook up above the weed as the rig comes to rest, and then it melts, disappears, and the rig flutters down onto the weed. But just be warned, if you use them in really cold water or you squeeze them on too tight, they can take over 10 minutes to come off. This is the multi-rig. I've converted over to this over the last couple of years. I love the fact that you can change the hook in seconds without wasting the rest of the hook link. And also the way it's tied, it's so simple to do. Basically, if you can tie an overhand loop knot, you can tie this rig. So in the end of the end trap semi-stiff, I've tied a figure of 8 overhand loop knot, cut off the tag end, and then I've pushed that loop through the eye of the hook. So the breaking strain of the hook link and the sides of the hook have to match together. So in this case, it's 20-pound end trap semi-stiff and a size 6 crank choddy, and you can just about push 2 sections of that through the eye of the hook, and then on goes a really big rig ring so that that bait slides up and down on the D that's been created. And then the end of that loop is basically lassoed onto the hook and pulled down into position like that, so the hook sits up almost straight off the lake bed. Now, the reason I've tied a figure of 8 loop is, one, it's very strong, but also it creates a big knot underneath the hook that you can mould the putty around. And you can see how neat that is together, sitting like that on the bottom. It's just one of the neatest pop-up rigs I've ever used. Underneath it, there's a little break in the coating. I've done that using a stripper tool, and that basically allows the hook to swivel and catch hold, and it also allows it to sit upright off the bottom by having that little tiny hinge underneath there. The hook link itself is about 6 or 7 inches long. That's my sort of go-to length. I would use it longer if it was very, very weedy, and I would use it shorter as well if there wasn't much debris out there. And at the other end of that hook link, I've just tied another figure of 8 loop knot, and then I've just opened it up with a chodic tool over some steam just to create that nice big loop so we've got even more movement. It's important on this rig that you do steam it nice and straight, and I've also steamed the other end just to create that almost straight angle coming out of that outturned eye, and also to give the D a nice shape so the bait will slide up and down it. Now, the bait itself is very, very important in this situation. You don't want them too buoyant. So if you've got baits that are not very buoyant and you're struggling to fish them with a hinge stiff rig, moving over to this will present them better. Because there's no metal underneath the hook, no ring swivel, you actually need more putty on this to sink the same pop-up. So a real buoyant one on this would end up with a massive lump of putty, and it just looks horrible, and I think it's more prone to tangling as well. So this one is a cork dust cell pop-up that I've made myself. I've just kneaded more and more cork dust into the paste, then rolled it into a ball, and that's basically as much cork dust as you can get in without the bait actually crumbling apart as you roll it. And you can see there I've got a reasonable amount of the dark matter putty. That will sink that pop-up pretty quickly because I'm fishing this rig over a spread of boilies. That's one of the other beauties of this rig. By tying that loop really small, you can get the hook bait really close to the lake bed, much closer than you can with most hinge stiff rigs. When I'm fishing over a spread of boilies and I want to lift the hook up just a little bit, this does it perfectly without making it stand up too high. And then moving on to the lead system, I've got a helicopter rig on again, basically because it's very soft here on the lower maynard, and a helicopter rig allows the lead to plummet into the soft bottom and the hook link still be fishing proud above it. But the lead itself is a new design. It's called a helicopter lead, and basically it's a cross between a pear lead and a distance lead. So very, very stable in flight, but when the lead hits the bottom, there's a big area on the bottom of the lead to send that tremor down the rod so you know exactly what you're fishing on. And the other main difference, you can see there's no swivel on the top of it. You've got a rig ring in its place, and that's really, really neat. Clipped onto the heli safe as I've got it here, makes a really neat setup, keeps the bulk of the lead as close to the heli safe as possible, which I like as well. But it also means that the lead won't fall off too easily when you're using that system. Sometimes if you just chop the swivel off of a lead, clip it onto the heli safe, when you're winding it in, if the hook gets caught in a bit of weed, it can open the heli safe up and the lead can fall off when you don't want it to. So moving back onto the rig, if you want to fish the hook bait really close to the lake bed, or you're fishing over a spread of boilies and you want an absolutely brilliant hook hold, then I can't recommend the multi-rig enough.
Give squid goo a go. A couple of years back I was a bit sort of unsure about the stuff, but I've used it for a long time now, and I can honestly say it's one of the biggest game changers I've ever had in my fishing. It's completely transformed my pop-up fishing, and these days, you know, if I'm using pop-ups, I'm using the squid goo. You know, I have that much faith in it, particularly through the winter and the spring. But as bright hook baits go, you know, that if I could pick one, it would be squid goo.
You can basically use any kind of lead system with a pop-up rig, but if you're going to use a helicopter rig like me, then I recommend that you check that helicopter rig often. So if you're splicing lead core, make sure it's not frayed, make sure the splice hasn't started to come undone or the super glue has worked free, because sometimes if you carry on using them all the time and you don't check them, they can fail on you just when you've got a big fish on the end. And I know because I've lost some big ones really close in where I've not checked the durability of the lead core leader. This is my armoury of hook baits when I'm pop-up fishing. You can see loads of different colours, there's loads of different smells, and I chop and change stuff around to suit how much bait I'm putting in, what time of year it is, and what works on the lake I'm fishing. One thing will not work all the way through, I promise you, so it's important to chop and change until you get a winning formula and then stick with that. But very basically, when the fish have just woken up in the spring, I'll just use single hook baits, put hardly any bait in the swim at all, and I use higher tracks. And I'll probably have 3 different ones on 3 rods. As soon as I get bites on one of them, I swap all rods over to that. So to talk to you about my different higher tracks, probably my all-time favourite at the moment is the Squid Supreme. I only use the goos as higher tracked hook baits. I used to make my own ones, but I caught so many more on the gooed ones that that's what I've swapped over to. I use the mainline pop-ups as the base for that. They're really buoyant, just the right size, and the goose soaks into them brilliantly. So the Squid Supreme is probably my all-time #1 now. Caught some massive fish on that. Obviously we did brilliant in Belgium on that when we went over there last summer. And then probably my other favourite is also a pink one. I love that colour. It's the almond. Needs no introduction really. It works so well on the underwater films, you know, and changing over to that was literally like flicking a switch. It was almost like we had a lure on the end. The fish were just smashing into it and it got loads and loads of bites. And that Almond Supreme, they were white baits to start off with, just like the squids. But over the course of the last year, they've soaked it in and it's literally the pink has eaten all the way through to the middle. So you've got flavour and colour all the way through them. And then moving on to the white ones. White's a brilliant colour
I've caught on it everywhere I've gone. These ones are the white cell pop-ups, and I've put a new goo on them. It's called Winterberry. It's a really sort of pungent berry smell. It's the first white goo in the range. It doesn't turn a pink bait white, but it will just soak into these white ones and not change the colour at all. And I reckon that is going to be an absolute winner over the coming months. And then next to that, the bumbleberry. Smells different from the winterberry. It's more of like a sherbety, sort of almost an IB sort of smell. That is going to be an absolute winner as well. They started as white hook baits, and you can see it's turned them a really bright red, which a couple of my mates on the syndicate lakes I fish have said is one of their favourite colours. And then the one at the back, I had to use this one on this session. It's Tom's favourite on the Walthamstow complex. It's the Pineapple Supreme. Everyone I know that's used it has caught absolutely loads on it. It's a lovely yellow colour. So these started off as pink baits. It's turned them that lovely sort of egg yolk yellow. Love that colour, far more than the really bright yellows. And anything that you're putting on there Supreme-wise, you can keep putting on. So any of the really thin goos, just keep putting them on, keep putting them on. They will soak in over a matter of months, and that flavour will go right through to the core. So that's the higher tracked hook baits. Moving over to the match the hatch, what I've found is if I'm feeding loads of boilies at the height of summer, sometimes I've had higher tracks on and the fish are showing all over me and I can't get a bite. I put a matching one on and caught one straight away. So I always let the fish tell me what to use, but if you're fishing and you think, I should have caught one by now, it's worth having a change. And when I moved over to these when we were in Belgium last year, I had 3 really nice fish in quick succession. We were feeding loads of banoffees, they're like a dark brown colour as well. Put these over the top and caught straight away. So you really do need to gauge what's happening on your fishery at the time and match your hook baits to that. And then finally, I'm not a fan of big pop-ups. You'll see here, these are all sort of 12 to 16 mil. Anything above that, I think it's too in your face, too garish, and I think fish can avoid it. So if you keep them to this sort of size, mix and match depending on the fishing you're doing and the time of year, that's what will keep your results consistent.
When I'm pop-up fishing, I always have an element of cork in my hook baits, whether it's a cork ball pop-up or simply like an airball style pop-up, drilled out and then plugged with cork. And the reason I do that, cork doesn't change buoyancy. You know, a pop-up of any makeup will take on water, and as it takes on, the buoyancy changes and obviously they become heavier. So a rig can start to lean and that sort of stuff. So the more cork you've got in a bait, the more stable the buoyancy of your pop-up's going to be. And basically, if you have your rig set to exactly how you want it to perform when it goes into the lake, when you're checking it in the margin before you cast out, the idea of having a lot of cork in there is in that, say, 10, 12 hours time, once the water's absorbed inside the bait, it's still going to be performing in sort of pretty much the same way as it went out. Whereas if you put a bait out there with no cork in it, the longer it's out there, the more water it's going to take on, and the more the sort of the way the rig's performing is going to change within the period of time that it's sat out there in the lake.
Yeah. Well, after a really weird take, we are into a carp. And it's gone right down the margins here. And this one is on the hinge stiff rig. And because I've been putting a lot of cell out there, I put a match the hatch on this one, the cork dust cell pop up, and that's the one that's roared off. There we go. This time, come on, come on. Come on, you lovely old Walthamstow warrior. Get in that net. Yes, get in! That is an absolute result. How about that? That is an absolute result on a day session at Walthamstow Lower Maynard, a 24-pound original. I absolutely love these fish, and it was nailed on a size 8 choddy, hinge stiff rig and a cell cork dust pop-up. Wicked.
Right, last time around we were at Walthamstow. I was with Dan. This time around we're at Ladywell, as you can see, with Mr. Peck. So we're going to be doing the same sort of thing, talking through all our favourite pop-up rigs, how we use them, why we use them, and when we use them. And true to form, Darryl is playing one on his favourite pop-up rig right now.
He's having a go, isn't he?
Yeah. Back to that tuna you had on holiday.
Deep diving.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
He's a lovely video.
Oh. Oh. Get him. Get him. Yeah.
Good work, mate.
Well, here it is, a cracking Ladywell 26 linear. We arrived yesterday, had a quick trot round, didn't really see any fish. So we set up at the deeper end of the lake that we've been told. And as we were getting set up, a few fish started showing and the odd sort of bubble started coming up. And it was really clear that there was a few fish about. And it's really obvious in that situation that you don't want to scare them, you know. You're trying to get out as minimally as possible. And single pop-ups, they come into their own in that sort of situation. So I've gone out there, 1 or 2 casts, searching out the better drops, not just anywhere, exactly where the fish are showing, exactly where the bubbles are coming up, and this is the result. Well, here it is, one of my favourite little pop-up presentations, and for all intents and purposes, it's very much like a hinge stiff rig. You've got a stiff boom, critically balanced pop-up, and it just sits up there on a little hinge. Last year in Belgium, we turned up on a lake we'd never fished before, simfish topping, cast out, got a drop, and you need to get a drop with this sort of rig. It needs to land on a fairly firm bottom, and within half an hour of getting there, we had a 50-pounder on it. So it's a big fish rig, it's a small fish rig, and it's really, really easy to tie. The first thing you need to do is strip 4 inches of coating off of the semi-stiff material, and that's what you're going to tie your hair loop from. Fold it over roughly an inch from where the coating starts, tie my overhand knot, and like I say, you want it to be an inch long, including the loop to where the coating starts. From there, you put the boilie onto the loop and then place your boilie stop inside. And I like to use the baiting needle just to crush that boilie stop down into the bait. It makes it look a little bit neat and tidier, and it certainly can't hurt. From there, thread it through the back of a size 8 choddy hook. Really important that you use a size 8 choddy because it's got that back turned eye, and that allows that coating to just come out at the correct angle. So once you've threaded that through, draw the boilie up to the bottom of the bend so it's just brushing. Tie a 9-turn knotless knot, and that's so the hair exits exactly opposite with the point. And then basically now your hook is connected to your bait. From that point, I thread it through the stripper tool. I go through the back side with a circle towards the blade, and I bring the hook down towards the circle at the back of the stripper tool until there's roughly about 10 centimetres of material from the hook side to the inner side of the stripper tool, and I drop it down onto the cutter on the reverse side, breaking the coating. I'm not really stripping it, I'm just trying to break the coating. Once I've broke the coating, I use a small split shot, whichever one counterbalances the pop-up that I'm using, and I just push it down that little break up against the coating on the swivel end and just pull the hook in through until I've got roughly 5mm of braid exposed, and that just gives the rig its hinge. And then from there, I'm tying directly to a hybrid leg clip, and I try and keep my boom about 6 inches, and I use a 4-turn grinner knot. So once you've tied your grinner knot, the rig is complete. There's one last thing to do though, and that is to steam it straight, and then just on the hook section, just at this part here, just create a little bit of curvature in that like that, and that just helps when the fish tensions the rig to roll the hook over into the bottom lip.
When you're baiting with pop-ups, it's really important to sort of judge how low you're going to have your pop-up in comparison to how wide you're spreading your bait. So basically, if I'm going to be using a catapult, for example, or put a pop-up rig next to a marker float, there might be catapulting bait over the top of that. If I'm going to put my bait tight, my pop-up will be fished low. Now, if I'm going to use a throwing stick and fish over a big area, you know, a couple of tennis court size, then I'll happily fish sort of 3-4 inch pop-ups, normally a chod rig in that situation. But the baiting, the bait you're using for one, you know, particles and stuff, you want to be fishing really low to the deck. If you are going to use a pop-up, I wouldn't personally advise it. And when you're boilie fishing, you know, like I say, the tighter your boilies are, the smaller you want your pop-up, and the wider spread your boilies are, the taller you want it to be.
Well, if you needed any more proof about the effectiveness of my pop-up rig, here's all the proof you'll ever need. 31 pounds of ladywell common. The fish have been topping out in front of me. I've just gone in there, no marker rod, flipped out that little pop-up rig, felt the lead down. It's clear enough to fish by getting a drop. A few boilies, kept it really light, really minimal, no disturbance, and the fish are hanging around. One of the greatest things about single pop-ups is you don't need to create a feeding scenario, and what I mean by that is you don't necessarily need to put loads of bait over them to get a bite. A lot of my fishing to start with, especially when I arrive at new venues that I don't know, I don't know the hot spots, so I go round, I look for fish, and if I see any bubbling, any topping, I just flick out, and as long as I get a good drop, definitive kickback on the rod tip, I know that that bait is fishing, presented, and if the carp has the opportunity to see it, has the opportunity to take it, and often that is all you need to get a bite.
saw 3 or 4 fish show on the far bank, and sort of much the same as what Daryl's used his pop-ups to do, casting it, showing fish. Slung them out there probably getting on for 2 hours ago now. Went round a little while ago, put a bit of bait out over there while Daryl watched my rods for me. And the middle rod is just absolutely busted off. Haven't seen the fish yet, but he's right in close now. Lovely job. Cheers, mate. Right, well here he is. Lovely 20-pound 8-ounce common. And this one really highlights sort of when pop-ups really come into their own. Now you can use a bottom bait to cast around the lake, there's no doubt in that, and you can use a pop-up at the same time to cast to a marker float, you know, it's entirely up to you. But what you can't really do with a bottom bait is cast to areas of sort of unknown territory and rely on a presentation, whereas with a pop-up rig you can do that time and time again. As long as you get a half decent drop, you're going to be fishing. You know, the bait's suspended off the deck, and that's exactly what I've done here. I've seen fish showing, cast to it, like I say, it hasn't taken very long to go. Right, well that's my rig balanced out and ready to go. Now this is my favourite pop-up rig, and in actual fact it's probably my favourite rig sort of that I use really. You know, it's not quite as versatile as a trod rig in the sense that you can cast it wherever you want and it's going to present, but it is very versatile in the sense that you can fish it in pretty much every situation other than into thick weed, and I have done that. You know, I fished it over gravel, silt, light leaves, light weed. It's a rig I came up with probably, well, getting on now, I reckon 7, 8 years ago probably now. Basically at the time I was using the more traditional style hinge stiff rig, which is stiff components all the way through. So this rig, you've got a stiff hook section, which is really good for hooking the fish. Obviously it's hard for them to eject, keeps its shape really well, so I put a nice curve in it, and that means it turns and spins in the fish's mouth and grabs hold of the bottom lip. The main difference is the boom section. So on this it's 15-pound semi-stiff, but I'll tie that with 15-pound end-trap soft as well. The idea being that rather than the traditional stiff boom, the soft boom allows this rig to present really well over absolutely anything, like I say, over leaves and stuff as well. Now, when I used to use the traditional stiff rig with the stiff boom section, if you put it over leaves and stuff like that, sometimes, because I balance the rig so it sinks very slowly, there's not enough weight there. So if you sit over uneven ground, the rig will sink, but the putty won't actually settle on the ground, whereas with the soft hook link, as you can see in my hands as I'm holding it, there's a nice curve in it, and basically that will land and it will kick away from the lead. There's a little bit of putty in the middle there. That will just kick away from the lead and present over absolutely anything, which I think is really important and something I certainly want it to do. Now, the other reason I use it with a soft boom section is when it goes into the mouth, you know. With a soft boom section, it doesn't really matter what angle the fish takes the rig from, it's going to fly back into the mouth. If you've got a stiff hook section, the angle the fish is picking up the bait from can affect how free the hook section is once it's in the mouth, 2, how easily it goes into the mouth, and also it cuts out the amount of angles a fish can pick it up from. The main reason I started using the hinge stiff rig was because it's big fish selective. Now I can absolutely guarantee you that is true, and particularly if the pop-up's a little bit taller. That is relatively short, that one, but the lake I'm fishing here today is not full of big fish, so better suited in a shorter length. But if you've got big carp in your lake and a lot of small ones surrounding them, which are the sort of lakes I fish normally do have, you're talking 1 or 2 big fish and a lot of small ones. That's why I use the hinge stiff rig, you know, because I can have small fish feeding on a spot, and the big ones will generally take this with a bit more gusto than the others, you know. And any of you who've watched the Underwater 8 DVD, you will see there lots of small fish in the swim. ignoring it. You know, they want to take it, but they can tell something's just a bit different. They sense this up off the bottom, but that big old common, he come in and snaffled it straight up. I've seen that plenty of times at plenty of different lakes, you know, particularly if you can watch fish in the edge. I've had small fish feeding amongst big fish on things like boilie crumb, and I've put this rig in amongst it, and for a while you're watching, it looks like nothing's going to pick the hook bait up, but all those small ones are avoiding it, and then bang out the blue, one of the biggest ones there sucks it straight into his mouth and the fish is hooked. So that's a really good reason. You know, if you want to be selective in your fishing, not just this pop-up rig, but any pop-up rig will help pick out the bigger fish. The first thing I do is take a length of 25-pound mouth trap. I normally use about a foot. Trim that off. I then place the hook alongside the middle of that length of mouth trap and form a whipping knot. Now, you can use a knotless knot if you want, it's entirely up to you, but I use the whipping knot simply because it's a knot I've used for years and I just haven't changed, but either will do. Once you've done that, you'll have 2 tag ends. Now, the top tag end coming out the top of the hook, you want to trim that down quite short because that's going to form your D at a later date, and the bottom end, you want to leave nice and long. 4 to 6 inches is ideal, makes joining the stiff material to the supple material a lot easier. So, take a length of either 15-pound end trap soft or 15-pound semi-stiff. Again, probably 14, 15 inches of that you want to be using. Snip a bit of that off and then hold the 2 hook links side by side. With the hook link side by side, you then want to tie a 3-turn grinner knot over the mouth trap section. Pull it down tight so it's gripping the mouth trap, and then basically you can do the same thing again, but this time around you're going to be tying the grinner knot into the mouth trap, but you're going to be doing 2 turns, not 3. Now when I tie that knot, I pull the loop down very small, which means that as I tighten the knot, the hook section doesn't stray too far from what I want it. So if I want the hook section to be 2 inches long, it'll be 2 inches and a little bit. If you tie it with the grinner knot with a big loop, you're going to end up with a much longer hook section than you want. So that's the key to getting the hook section to stay the length you want it at. And that's particularly useful when you're trying to keep them quite short like this. So once you've done the back-to-back grinner knot, trim the tags off. I leave a little tag end on the end of the semi-stiff, and the tag end from the mouth trap, I'll blob it with a lighter just to get it out of the way. Once you've blobbed that off, I then remove about 1 inch of the coating from beneath the knot. So the reason I do that is to allow some movement into the hook section. If you don't remove the coating there, then the hook will fly into the mouth fine, but you're dramatically going to decrease the amount of movement the rig has in the mouth, and that's really important as to getting the perfect hook hold in the bottom lip. You can form the D whenever you like, but when doing so, I like to make sure the D is not too big, not too small, just enough to allow a lot of movement. And in order to form the D, it's very simple. With the tag end coming off the top of the hook, you simply slide a medium rig ring onto there, pass the tag end through the back of the hook and out the front, trim it off, and then blob it with a lighter, and your D will be perfectly formed. And then moving up to the top of the rig, I tie another grinner knot, 9 inches. So I place the knot on my rig board, the knot where the 2 hook links join on the rig board at 9 inches, pinch it at the top, tie another grinner knot so that when it's done, I get 9 inches between the putty here at the bottom of the hook section and the top of the rig. So I've just formed the loop by grinner knot, tighten down early. And once I've done that, slide a bit of shrink tube over the knot, which I steam down at a later date. Now the reason that shrink tube's there, bit of a funny one really. I mean, one day I had a tag and I was looking at my tag end and I just thought, you know what, I don't like that. I'm going to streamline that. So I put a bit of shrink tube over it and it seems to stiffen up the loop. So it's kind of acting as a bit of a kicker for you at the same time, as well as streamlining the rig and just getting that horrible little tag end hidden and out of the way. In the middle of the hook section, I position a really small bit of putty. What that helps to do is as the rig kicks away, that falls quicker and just helps the sort of far end of the rig kick out nice and straight every time. And then to complete the rig, you put a bit of putty around the knot, covers it up nice and neat, attach your pop up to the end, which the putty will obviously weigh down, and that's where it's really important to balance it right so the rig sinks nice and slow. Normally I want this rig from this position as it hits the water to a vertical position. I want that to take at least 5 seconds to sink, so when you're doing that, watch out for that. But once you've done that, you know, once you've balanced it out like I just did, it's perfect, ready to go, and like I say, that'll catch you a carp from pretty much anywhere you'll ever cast it.
Over the years, I've used various different pop-ups. You know, I've tried all sorts of combinations, flavours and colours, but one that has done really, really well for me in recent years is the mainline milky toffees in 10 or 12 mil, they're about 12 mil, and add the thin squid goo, the supreme version. That cuts right into them. They seem to hold the flavour, and although it's leaking out throughout the length of time into the water, when you bring them back, it almost stops the bait taking on the bad smells of silt and stuff like that. So if you're worried about using a bait that might be getting contaminated by dirty smells on the bottom, look no further than a milky toffee with some squid goo.
I think when deciding what to use, whether you're going to say you use a chod rig or a hinge stiff rig, for example. Now, to me, I think the hinge stiff rig is a much better hooker of fish. The hook holes are generally deeper. If I know what the spot's like, I will always choose a hinge stiff rig over a chod rig, you know. But if my main aim is to be running around the lake, just casting at shows, and I know I'm going to be fishing to areas where sort of unseen ground, I don't want to have 5, 6 casts to sort of suss the area out, I'll use a chod rig then. Right, well when we came to Ladywell, me and Dale were both hoping to catch one of these, a proper Ladywell baby, and we've had some other really nice fish as well, so I've had good fun and I'm sure you have as well, mate.
Yeah, turned up. Luckily the fish were here, bubbling and showing. Got out without the marker float, just cast those little pop-up rigs out there, felt the lead down. I know that they're fishing, much the same as I do in my big carp fishing. Turn up, try and find them, get a drop, and just go in as minimally as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the idea of this section. Between me, Dan and Daryl, we've wanted to give you a proper insight into our pop-up fishing, why we do things, how we do things, and hopefully, through all the information you've seen and watched, you'll be able to go out there too, pick some bits, apply them to your own fishing, and catch yourself plenty of carp as well.
Hello and welcome to Croatia. Now the lake behind me is not only a big old gravel pit, it's home to some huge carp, and by huge I mean 70-pound plus, and loads of them. Now the reason we're here, not only is it to catch some of these fish, but it's to give you a long range masterclass. Now I know there's some of you at home, probably some of my mates, laughing, Hamidi doing a long range masterclass? Well, I've taught myself over the last few years to fish effectively and accurately at over 100 yards plus. We're not talking extreme range of 150 yards, things that probably only 1% of you are likely to do. The fishing I'm going to do this week is what 99% of you can do. I'm going to show you how to do it effectively, the hardware, the bait, the tackle, also the technique, and my old mate Neil Spooner's also going to be joining me. So between us, I hope we're going to show you a few of the carp, a few of the methods that will allow you to get out there and do the exact fishing we're going to do here. So the first thing we're going to do, get this bobbin on, get some bait in to feed these greedy Croatian carp, and then show you that marker setup that got this party started. Wow, that didn't take long, did it? I was going to show you that marker setup, and just a few spods over the top. That's what the locals said. We've got some great guys to give us advice about this particular lake, and they said just ring the dinner bell. It's almost like fishing an English day ticket. Just put a few baits out over the top, keep it going in, and just bring those fish in. Whether they're 50 pound, 20 pound, or 80 pound, they all respond the same. But what I like to do is play the fish sideways, and I think it tends to just bring them up a little bit in the water. It's something you see a lot of matchmen do, and I enjoy doing it. It seems to bring the fish up and keep them out of harm's way. If you pull up, especially because this lake's quite deep, in some places it's 5, 6, 7 meters deep. So by doing it this way, I like to think I'm dropping the lead and the fish is coming up in the water. So I'm playing it sideways until it comes under the rod tip, and then I'll revert back to the sort of standard way of playing them. The mono I'm using 10-pound touchdown. It's 0.30 millimeter diameter, so it's a very narrow monofilament because I'm casting to make it easier, and I've actually got a braided leader on to a safe zone leader. And what the braided leader, it's 50-pound sinking armour cord. What that does is it actually takes a lot of the stretch out of the cast, so it helps me compress the rod and the blank quicker. It's just a little advantage if you're allowed to use braided leaders. A lot of lakes in England ban them, but here they're allowed in Croatia, so it just makes sort of getting those distances that little bit easier because it compresses the rod, so it takes less effort in the cast to get the rod to compression. These tiny little tip bits will just allow you to put yards onto your cast. So these last few moments, it's all about just letting the rod tip do the work. Clutch is set nicely. When you come to places, warmer climate, that warm water doesn't half psych up a fish. Naturally, they fight harder. God knows what one of them 80-pounders could feel like. Oh, here we go. Look at the heli, safe, done its job, lovely. The lead's off. Here we go. Mr. First Croatian Carp, are you in? Oh, was nearly out. Oh, lovely. Nice start. Feeling good. Easy girl. There we go. 28.5 pound, my first Croatian carp. Now, I can't appreciate you for too long, so I've got to get that rod back out and try to catch a bigger friend of yours. Mwah. Now here is the marker float setup. It might seem like an insignificant bit of kit, but it is really, really vital, especially when you're fishing gravel pits like this and how you set it up. So firstly, the float itself, it's a drop zone marker float. I've got the yellow flight on. You can use the red one or even the black one, whatever takes your fancy. I've also got a little marker float buffer bead here that stops the lead sort of jamming against the swivel. It's just, as it says on the tin, a nice buffer for the lead and the float. But the interesting bit about this setup is the fact that I've got a loop on the 50-pound armour cord. It's quite a long loop, and what that allows me to do is to take the float off and then just have a lead. And the reason we sometimes do that is because we just want to feel the bottom, right? Depth is not as important in some situations as it is here. So sometimes just leading about, finding a little hole in the weed, just the lead is enough for that, for clipping up. However, in this situation, the depth is vital. You've got a very deep gravel pit here, so the little depressions and the big differences of bars and humps can make a huge impact on your results, hence why we're using the float. And one final point with the loop, if you're fishing in shallow water and you're leading about, you can often take the lead off and then loop a spod on. So there's 3 real important reasons why we've got that loop on. If I've joined the armour cord leader with the aid of a back-to-back grinner, or you could use a water knot to our new marker braid. And a little word on that marker braid, I have to admit, I did have a former favourite, but this has superseded it. It uses the best Japanese braid technology, and honestly, it makes casting a joy. And that's a really important thing. When you're fishing long distances, if you can't cast your float as far as you want to your fishing rods, you're not going to be feature finding in the areas you need to be. So the braid and the shock leader and also the rod and the reel are vital. And a word on the rod, I'm actually using the Infinity spod rod, okay, because it's what I spod with. I like to spod with it, but also the stiffness in the tip gives you far more sensitivity with the braid. You can almost feel every sort of click of gravel, every bit of sand that you run through, and a soft rod doesn't give you that same feeling. So always use a stiffer rod with your marker float. And like I said, I'm using the spod reel because everything's interchangeable. I can put a spod on that one and cast out, really simple. And then a word on the actual fishing situation itself. I'm currently fishing on the back slope. Well, 2 of the rods are, and ironically the rod that's gone is the one on top of the sandbar. Now what I'll do is I'll carry on fishing and just see how that goes. If I start getting bites just on that one rod, I know at the moment the carp prefer to feed in that shallower water, so I'll bring the rods in, and you're only talking a quarter of a rod length difference. But these are the tiny adjustments you need to make throughout a session. Let the carp tell you where they want to feed. Maybe later on at night they'll want to feed in deeper water, and as a result you adjust again. So just keep tweaking, let the carp tell you what you need to do, and that's how you sort of start to amass a big hit. Now I need to get back in that bivvy, tie some fresh rigs, wait for that next bite. Just the same as the last time, cue an absolute ripper. I have to admit, I am very lucky to have a wonderful sponsorship with Daiwa, and as a result, I get to use all the finest and greatest and newest tackle there is. I'm not ashamed to say, in my hands and attached to this rod is a custom Basia. I've been on the DCR website like a little kid at Christmas, and I was able to design a Basia exactly how I want it. All the little red touches, the little red flashes, right down to the reel handle. So if you fancy having a play, even if you don't want to buy one, you can go on that website and sort of have a fiddle until your heart's content. Lots of different bits and pieces you can add to the Basia, right down to the colours, the trims, the back of the reel, everything. It's a joy to use. If you're financially blessed, then you can possibly even invest. This one is pulling nicely. And to complement such a top of the range reel is the AGS Basia rod. Again, it's the very top of the tree, the absolute pinnacle of fishing rods or carp rods that Daiwa do. Wonderful eyes, very light in the blank. It's a 13-foot 3 3/4. Below the Basia you have the Infinity. I also have used the 13-foot 3 3/4 pound test curve Infinities, and I absolutely love them. I've used them at Gigantica, all across the world. They've been absolutely brilliant. You've also then got the 12-foot 3 3/4 Infinity. Once again, I've used them for ranges well over 120 yards, and they've been brilliant. Comfortable, light, brilliant. But again, we're talking top end here, but you can still achieve those sort of distances with the longbow and even the whisker in the Daiwa range. But once again, aim for that 3 3/4 pound test curve. It might sound like a lot, you might think, blimey, that's nearly 4 pound test curve, it's like a spod rod. But honestly, no Daiwa rod acts like that. They've got wonderful tips, wonderful action, and even though they've got a strong backbone, that sort of flexible tip makes playing fish a joy. From the Basia to the Infinity, to the longbow, and even the 3 1/2 pound test curve whisker, you'll be okay with the right technique. Come on, mate, in you go. You're a lovely little common. Little for Croatia, I think. Here we go. 35.5 pounds of Croatian bronze bruiser. Awesome. You can often get it where it just seems to be like the same rod, the same area just keeps going, and one's only a few feet either side don't produce any takes, even though there's food all over it. Your hook baits are the same. It's mad, really. Double take, double take. Rock and roll. It's bedlam in Croatia. Carp carnage. This is fun, isn't it, eh? Long range masterclass with a little bit of bedlam thrown in for good measure. Oh, this one's a bit more of a unit, I think. Oh yeah. Here we go. Getting close. Look at the shoulders on this thing. It's a proper big shoulder carp. Go on, get in that net. Sort of. Woo! One down. Let's get to that other rod. Nailed in the bottom lip. Go on. Oh. Might just have a lay down for 5 minutes. There we go. 32 1/4. The second part of a brace with a bigger one languishing in the net. So, thank you, darling. You've got to go back. Oh, lovely. Right. How big is it? I thought so. It is 50 3/4. I will take that. Thank you very much, darling. Woo! £50 3/4 on an IQD rig. Beautiful. Told you there was fish over the top of that. Just putting some spods out, and I actually saw fish boiling on the surface right by the spod, and literally could have been 5 seconds, and then I heard a bleep on the left-hand rod, and lo and behold, an early morning Croatian carp is on. Middle rod, double take. Go on. All right, Jack, getting used to this, son, aren't you? As soon as you ring that dinner bell, they're just on you in seconds. It is a triple take, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God. I suppose when you get it right, it goes quite right. Now we're gonna have to get our new man, Tim, involved. All right, Tim, nice and sideways. How are we doing, mate? Do you want to step in there? So yeah, like I was saying, I made sure all the hook baits were matching. And as you can see, it seems to be working. So let's talk about that one. It's the mainline cell balance wafters. I'm obviously feeding the cell and a mixture of other particles and stuff. One of the things I love doing is combining the different goos. And over the years, I've always found that a citrus fruit or a combination of citrus fruits mixed with berries can be a deadly combination on your bait. So one of my favourite goos the last couple of years is, well, or the last year if you like, because I had it in sample stage as well, is the mango nana. It's a combination of mango, banana and guava. And then we've also recently received a sample of one called bumbleberry. Now, whether it comes out or not, I'm not too sure, but looking by the results we're getting, I'm pretty certain it will, and this one's a combination of berries. So I put the two together in the tub, shaking it up, and I've just left them to soak in there for a couple of weeks, ready for this session. They've gone almost like an orangey red. As you can see, the first bite was on it. I've changed all the rods to it, and bingo dingo, 3 rods on at once. Absolute carnage. Oh, nailed. 1 down, 3 to go. No, 1 down, 2 to go. 2 down, 1 to go. Come on. Turn your head. There we go. In she comes. How about that? There we go. Not bad. Go on in. How big?
33.5.
37 3/4.
And old Gubbins here, 29.15. What are the chances of that? 3 bites and I get the smallest one. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? When you get it all right, it can go very right indeed. Thank you. Beautiful. Right, before I recast, let's have a look at the rig. Now, this doesn't really need too much of an introduction. It made its name on carp tackle tactics and tips, but I suppose it rubber stamped its name in history on Underwater 7 when Dan used it to tame the big plated. I absolutely love it. I've fallen in love with the setup. Here I'm using the IQ Soft in 20 pounds and I'm using a curve shank in a size 2. Now the trick to tying this is with a little whipping knot first onto the shank of the size 2 curve, then quite simply, you put on a micro rig swivel, okay? Slide that on, okay, which is the long bit hanging from the hook, which is basically the remainder of your hook link. And then you just commence and tie off the knotless knot. The important thing is to get the size of the D right. So I just have a little look and here it's pretty much perfect. You're looking for about a 3 to 4 mil separation from the bottom of the curve, just as it's positioned there. Tie off the knotless knot and it's absolutely perfect. Here, I'd say the hook link is about 8 inches in length. And what I do, instead of a loop, I like to tie it straight to the swivel. Okay, one of the reasons is I'm using fluorocarbon. And fluorocarbons with the aid of a strangulation knot can be weakened quite dramatically. So I've always preferred to tie it straight to the swivel. And there I've just got a dark matter, long anti-tangle sleeve tied straight to that swivel. Absolutely perfect. And what you've got there with that ring swivel, it's running on a safe zone leader. And at the end of the safe zone leader, I've actually converted and put on the new HeliSafe system. What I've done is I've actually cut the ring and the bottom of the swivel off the ring swivel leader, okay? And what that's allowed me to do is actually run all the components of the HeliSafe right down to the bottom, okay? So it's totally converted it, and then quite simply put on the ring swivel and then added the lead core part of the no trace system. So the lead core sleeve, if you like, and then the bead, and I've pulled that down to the second tungsten collar on the safe zone leader, so the lowest one towards the lead. Now, a lot of people might say, well, if you're not using a chod rig, why have you got that bead so high up? Well, I don't know why, to be honest. One of the main reasons is I actually quite like the movement, even when fishing over gravel. It's just almost a hybrid between a leg clip and a running rig. Maybe it makes a small difference, who knows, it hasn't done any harm. And the reason I'm using the helicopter system, not only does the IQ have great anti-tangle properties, but so does the helicopter setup and the fact that the lead is on first. It flies through the air, it's very streamlined, and for fishing at long range, I think it's the perfect setup for me. Right, let's get it back out there. Oh. Well, blimey, that really did not take long. And I know you're probably getting bored of me saying that, but it really doesn't. It is a very, very well-stocked lake, but it's just the same principles as fishing a well-stocked lake anywhere in the world. It just goes to show those rigs, the efficiency of those rigs is what I love. The IQ D-rig, I just think as well, the way the IQ leaves the aggressive in-turn of the curve also helps that sort of grabbing property. And the one thing I forgot to mention, are we going to get another? Yes, we are going to get another double take. On cue. Welcome, Jack. Step under, mate. So if form would have it, are we due for a triple? Who knows? One of the important things I didn't mention really about the rig is the fact that there's a combination of elements with it. You've got the stiffness of the IQ 20 pound, which stops it from tangling. You've got the aggressive nature of that in-turn on the curve shank, coupled with the stiffness in the IQ itself, causing a very, very aggressive sort of curve, coupled with a big hook. And that's another tweak that I've made to my fishing the last few years. Watching Danny use a lot of big hooks in his fishing, landing a lot of carp. I don't know, I've just changed. I've started using bigger hooks with zigs and on the bottom, and I've definitely noticed a difference. I want the first fish that comes in the swim to get nailed, not the 10th or the 11th that can sort of throw out a small hook regularly. And we've seen it on the underwater. You never hook a fish when it's blowing the bait back out. If it's going out no matter what. You get them on the way in, and that's your moment of opportunity. And I think the big hook allows you to capitalise on that better. Right, let's concentrate on this Croatian carp. Also, in a second, you'll see that the reason I'm using the heli-safe is not only for the distance fishing, but also the fact I'm going over all these humps and bumps, and I've got it set up to drop the lead, because I want the fish to come up in the water, and if I had that big lead sort of attached and staying attached, I think the fish would use that weight almost as sort of resistance and help them, or cause them to burrow almost, you know, stay down deep. But by dropping it, they come up. However, you know, if you are fishing at range and you want to sort of keep the lead on, the heli-safe is adaptable. You can just put on the little sliding collar that goes inside the mechanism, and you can change it from a drop-off system to a lead system that holds the lead, and you can just fish it conventional heli style. But in this situation, dropping the lead for me is important. Come on. Go on. Jack's still tussling his down the bank. Come on, you big old cheese. Get in that net. Oh yeah. IQD rig magic. Right, let's give Jack a hand. This one's only nicked on the outside. Not the best hook hold, but good enough. Another 2 bites and another 2 fish landed. That's what that rig's all about. Well, it appears that I may have grossly mistaken the size of this carp. I said it may go 40 pound. Having had some friends with an aerial vantage point throughout the fight, they've duly informed me it's potentially a lot bigger. And now, having assessed its mass, I think we could have the biggest fish of the trip. Oh. Now, I'm really got to be careful. Loads of slack line in the net. Big fish. Not taking it out of the water at all. We've got the sling and the mat, everything right by the water's edge. Just gonna lay it in there. There's 0 weight on this fish at the moment, it's just in water. No tight line going into it, putting any pressure on the hook hold. So just a case of gently easing it along the margins and getting it to the mat. Right. Right, take all the care in the world. These big fish, it's really, really important when they're out of water not to put any weight on their organs. Keep them on their sides as much as possible, even in the waist sling. So I'm gonna really gently lift this up and hook it on, and then get it straight back in the water. So do everything afterwards, photographs and all in the lake. But I'm just making sure the fish stays flat. There you go. Burning a few calories there. What have we got? 52.12. There we go. Biggest of the trip. And I'm gonna get it lowered down, back on its side as quickly as possible, and straight back in the water for some pickies. Wow, 250s on consecutive days. Mental. Well, right, this is the hard part, getting this 52 3/4 pound brute up for a picture. And if you wanted any further proof how important it is to use a tangle proof and an effective setup at range, this is it. This is when you know you've got it right indeed. Thank you, darling. What a monster, absolute cheese. Right, just topping the area up after that bedlam, so no better time to take you through the grub that I'm using. So firstly, in the white bucket, we have some particles. Now, these have been lovingly prepared by the guys here. This lake sees a lot of particles, so you'd be stupid not to put some in, and it definitely does get the party started that bit quicker. So, you know, it's that buffet theory that I talk a lot about. There's a reason I do it. I like to have something out there for every fish that comes in my swim, and if they're not necessarily in for the boilies to start with, then hopefully the particles will get them started before the big boys come for the boilies, because we really do believe that boilies do attract and keep the bigger fish in the swim for longer. We've seen it on the underwater films, and the cell is my boilie of choice pretty much everywhere I go on planet Earth. If I looked at it statistically, I'd quite happily say it's the best bait I've ever used, and probably the best bait that's ever existed if you look across the captures across the globe with this bait. Now, you might notice there's a slight yellow tinge to it. When I come to a well-stocked lake, I do like to just give them a little glaze of extra sweetness, and on these I've put the corn twist goo and the tiger nut goo. Both are very sweet and very subtle, and that just gives the bait a little bit of taste enhancement whilst it's out there, and hopefully draws fish into the swim quicker. But it's not enough to detract from the brilliance of the cell. So all I'm doing is just adding a little bit there, not too many. Notice the spom is not overloaded, and there's a reason for that. It's critical to have this at the right weight, because when you're trying to cast a long way, if you've got it too weighted, it makes the cast harder. It makes it harder to pull the rod through the air. So that's the sort of amount I've got in there. And what the particle also helps you allow to do is, by giving it a shake, it helps everything bed to the bottom of the spom, which makes everything more aerodynamic. So that's the bait and the spom. Let's talk about the hardware, because that's also very important for this type of fishing. Now, firstly, the reel. It's exactly the same as the one I've been using on my marker float. It's the Daiwa Emblem spod reel, and it's loaded with the new Korda spod braid. Now, there's a reason it's yellow. Some of you might think it's just for fashion or style, but it isn't. There's a functional reason. We found when we were definitely floater fishing especially, that when the spod went out, and it laid on the surface, that actually it kept gulls and coots and that away. So we've made it yellow. Might make a difference on some lakes, it might not on others, but it certainly won't do any harm for your spod, and it makes casting it an absolute dream. If you had a big old thick braid on there, that makes life difficult and fishing very, very ineffective. So great braid, 50-pound armour cord leader, and then finally the longbow DF rod. That's a spod rod, 4.5-pound test curve, I believe, and really it complements everything. It's not too hard, but I've found a technique that works for this rod and setup, you know. I haven't done this fishing for a little while, so I'd say over a year since I was fishing at this type of range, and I actually found that swinging the spod in front of me, then bringing it back is helping to load the carbon, and then with the weight on my back foot, sort of progressing forward at speed and pulling that left arm through, it's sailing this whole thing out to the spot with a little bit of ease. So without further ado, I'm going to carry on baiting up that swim. So even though this is a long-range masterclass, there's important parts to this type of fishing, especially when you're trying to amass a big hit as well, is having your rigs prepped. Now, using the IQD rig and the fact that I don't particularly like to have loops on the end, I have to admit, for the last few years, I haven't actually used our rig safe, but with the newly designed rig safe, they've got new pins in them, okay? And these pins, two types, obviously the straight single needled pin, and then there's a double needle pin, which allows you to actually have a rig in there without a swivel, a link loop, or a loop on the end, so that you can basically tie them to a swivel. And for someone like me that likes to tie their rigs on still in the conventional manner, it's been a godsend. So I can now have a few prepped. Did a few in the evening last night. Sat there in the lit up bivvy, getting eaten by mozzies and tying a few D-rigs. Here we go. Definitely ready, I think. Nailed, plump in the bottom lip on the old D-rig. Bosh. There we go. 24 pounds, a lovely fish to take us into the evening. They don't have to be big to be beautiful. Thank you, darling. Just got the rods out. I put about 10 or 15 spoms out before, bang on the money. Only putting 2 rods out now because I don't want the risk of them all going. And I'm starting to have a little play around with hook baits as well. This actually is the one I've been getting all the bites on, but I've also put a rod out. It's the second rod to go out, to be fair, with a prototype mainline hook bait, which is a soluble type of boilie. I've tipped it with a little fluorescent cell pop-up, the little mini ones they do, and that's been soaked in a tuna goo, a tuna supreme. There's 2 new things on that rod. If they go, it'll be great to see, because the soluble boilie is very different to what you'll be used to. It's made with a type of syrup, so it's not made with an egg, and it's not boiled either. It's almost like a paste. It's dried out, so it still retains the shape of a boilie, but they're very, very attractive, and it's big in the Eastern European market. It's very quick at getting bites. Imagine a hard ball of paste that's breaking down on your hair slowly, and fish find that irresistible. Anything that gets in the water column quickly is brilliant. The fish, it's in their orbit, they can see it, they can feel it, they can smell it, they can taste it, they want it. You're really not a big fish at all. It's mad, that battle. Oh. Come on, you're in. Oh, yes. Good start to the morning. Hello, mate. Bang. The rod with the soluble is away. It's big. As you've got older, you deal with the experience of it a little better. I know if you go back to when I hooked my first double, I remember what that feeling was like. And I suppose as you get older and you catch more carp, it's the bigger carp as they get bigger and bigger that get you feeling nervous. And this is doing just that. But experience just tells you to be relaxed and just keep doing what you're doing. You know, loosen the clutch off when you think it's going to go. Take no unnecessary risks. That is what goes through my head when that fish is getting close to the net. You don't need to pull its head off. I often have a little glance at what I think the hook hold's like. I don't think this is the greatest hook hold we've had all week. So I'm just playing it gingerly. Also, I'm using 10-pound line and it's tied to a shock leader, so there's a weak point there as well, and that's important. I'm taking all these things into account while I'm playing this fish. I'm not just thinking, right, get that in as quick as I can. I'm thinking about my hardware, my technology, the hook hold, and I'm just thinking, that's a big fish. Take your time. Come on. What an unbelievable battle. Mr. Carp, you've knocked me around, you've beat me up. But that was one battle I am happy to win. That is a really good fish. Oh yeah. Wow, well, it's not often you catch a 43-pound brute like this. 43.5, I believe. And I have to slip it back quickly because you've got something bigger in the net. But this really is long, powerful and mean. And it's had time to rest as well, so it's really full of beans. But have a look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, darling. I'm going to get you straight back and we'll get back onto that absolute monster languishing in the net. Can only laugh. 60 pounder, how about that? Again, turning it on its back rather than the front. I don't want any pressure on this organ, on its organs. I'm going to get my words out now. It's taking me by surprise. I didn't think it was going to be 60 pounds. So here we go. Have we got the muscle to get it up? That's the big question. I think so. I'm going to use my knees to just support my forearms when lifting a behemoth like this. There you go, how about that? Oh, 60 pounds, my first ever 60. Absolutely buzzing. And do you know what? Putting on a new hook bait for the first time, and not a bad way to christen them, is it? Can only laugh, to be honest. Thank you, mate. You fought like you look, an absolute bruiser. All right, our dog, Harry Spodder. Pull up a bucket, me old China. Do you know what? There's something really, really hard about weighing 60 pounders all on your Jack Jones. I really needed a gilly.
Sorry, 60 pounder.
I've had a 60.
Shut up.
My first ever one. Thanks. Handshake number one.
Yeah.
I've also had 250s. So to say this place is a little bit freakish is an understatement. So how are you feeling? Considering you were excited at Brasenose this time last year for the Masterclass.
I was about to say, as you know, I love a bite. And you've had 250s and a 60 already.
Do you want to know anything about the fishing situation?
Well, I wouldn't mind. Yeah, what's happening?
Go on, what do you want to know?
Well, what's the technology?
Coming through is an IQD rig, heli safe. The audience have seen it, but you haven't. And it's absolutely nailing them big uns, mate, to be fair.
That looks good to me. I mean, I've already got a little plan in my head. I want to go, I brought a load of ready tides with me. So I've certainly got some IQD rigs. That's good to see. I know my technology's already going to be working. I've got a little bit more confidence in the leg clip though.
Yeah, mate, whatever. Honestly, if I'm brutally honest about the swim and the actual fishing itself, I've worked out that it's more the spot and where the lead lands and getting all that part of the jigsaw right and the bait nice and compact.
Yep.
That finishes the jigsaw puzzle. Do you know what I mean? So the rig, that's working, the hook bait's a pucker,
yep.
But also getting it in the right place consistently at range, that is what finishes it all off. Are you ready?
I cannot wait, mate. Let's face it, if you've had a 60, it's got to be quite easy, isn't it?
Go get your rod sorted. Nice, I like your banter, I'm glad you brought it. Right, Spoons, gonna get this float right in the middle of your spot, son, so you can see where you need to cast. That is absolutely slam bang in the middle of it.
Get it popped up there, mate. I want to get a rod out.
Easy, mate, easy.
How deep is it, Al?
It's 9 foot there, mate, and I reckon to the left of it, you're going to go up the hump, if you like, so it'll go shallower to the left of that float and slightly deeper to the right, okay?
Okay.
So that if you think of the pinnacle of it, just to the left of that, which they say is about 2.5 metres. Nice big carp depth. Right, Spoons, here we go, mate. This is my right-hand rod. Perfecto, yeah. Well, me and Spooner haven't even got all our rods out. We literally got... Spooner's in! He's only in. Look at him run. Spooner, that is the campiest run in the history of the world, but I like it. Go on, son. There we go. Right, over to Spooner's rescue.
Funny enough, it's doing the same as Ali's fish. I mean, they seem to come in relatively quickly, but they get in close and they just, they do not want to see the back of the landing net.
Spooner's got his one in the net as well. One rod, on the spot, bumbleberry and mango nana, does it again.
Well, my mum always taught me not to be greedy, so I've started with a little one, just under 22 pound. I'm still absolutely buzzing with it though. Caught on an IQD rig size 2, like I mentioned before, and this one come on a mainline cell wafter soaked in the mainline cell liquid. Just want to get my rod back out now. Back you go. Come on. There we go. My first £30 common, £34 it weighed in at. They're getting bigger. There we go. First mirror, first 40-pounder, ready tied IQD rig. While I play this carp, it's important to mention to you how important it is to actually have the right landing net and carp care kit. All the stuff you'll always see Team Korda use is from the tracker and signet stable when it comes to those elements of netting, landing, weighing and retaining fish. And here down by my feet is the new hydro net from Tracker. Carbon arms as well, so not just the pole but also the landing net arms are all made with carbon. It's very light, very crisp. We're actually using a range of the Tracker nets while we've been here for all budgets basically. They've been getting dragged up and down the bank. You've seen the gravel here, they've been getting thrown around, really been getting a right old testing and they've been brilliant up till now, so fair play boys. And with regards to the slings, the weighing slings, they're always Tracker, as are the mats. When it comes to weighing a big old fish, it doesn't half help having that tripod, and that's from the Signet stable. You would have seen us hooking on the Korda scales on a number of occasions, and especially as I've been on my own. Weighing a big fish on your own is not easy, so the aid of the tripod has made that
a lot more possible and doable on the bank. And obviously it's important for the fish's safety, you know, you don't want to be doing these sort of things on your own. So putting all those things together might not seem like a lot, but you know, a light landing net, making those final stages of the fight a bit easier is absolutely vital, as is all the rest of the bits. Another really vital thing, we've almost become ambassadors of it as a team, is just always transferring the fish either in the net or from the net into the sling in the water, because the mouth damage that you see on the majority of fish and the fin damage is done by the net between the point that it goes in the landing net and you get it up for weighing in a photograph. And that is the bit we're supposed to enjoy the most when you're holding up your trophy shot, but that's where we do the most damage to our quarry, which is why we, as a matter of course, on every single fish, we transfer that carp into the retention sling. Everything's already zeroed, so it's just a matter of getting to the bank, getting that fish on the scales and weighing it, and looking after your quarry for the future, so your sons and their sons can enjoy them same fish that you enjoy right now. Nearly ready. Boom. Easy netting with them. Lovely. There we go, 37 1/4, and in and out the water very quickly and safely, weighed and about to be returned in just a few moments. If you're new to the game, then make sure fish safety is a #1 priority for you to learn. Back you go, darling. Beautiful. Now, I bet you're wondering what shelter I'm using for this year's masterclass. Well, once again, Tracker have lumbered me with the smallest one in their range. They've made a Tempest that's not only smaller, made of a different material. It's a polyester 210D. It's actually the new Tempest Brolly. But from the outside, you might think, well, it looks a bit like a bivvy. You're right, because I've got one of the optional extras on it. This is the winter skin, okay, and I've put this over it. The reason, ultimately, this Tempest Brolly is made for the overnighter or the short session angler. If you're looking for something for that type of fishing, then this is perfect. If you like to get somewhere, get set up, wait till the fish are in your swim, or like to move a lot, then this really is something for you. What I actually like to do with this type of thing is have the bed chair laid out, all my bags are out, and then I'm waiting for the situation, or the, you know, just when it gets dark, and I put it up, and it's a joy to put up. If you've not seen the Tempest system till now, where have you been? So easy to use. What I actually do, take it out the bag, lay it on the floor, the poles go together so easily, fan it all out once all the poles are together, get yourself in a position, and then this is the good bit, using the Tempest mechanism. Pull it all together and then just put the little loop, if you like, that goes over the pole, and there it is. It's all locked in position and it just holds perfectly. You then also have a tensioning strap which bends the bivvy into shape, if you like. You can use it without, but I actually like to do it because it gives it the height and elevation that's just perfect and makes it look like a little castle. And then I pull it over the top of the bed chair, put it in position, have it all set, and then quite simply peg from the back, okay, and work my way around to the front until I've got the front lovely and taut and looking nice. And then quite simply on this session I've repeated the process with the winter wrap. I've thrown it over the top, pulled it down, I've lined up the seams with the poles and then pegged it all the way around once again until I've got it nice and tight. And to be honest with you, this is probably the hardest ground known to man. I mean, I've seen pictures of the moon and it looks softer than here, right? Pegged down, it's absolutely mint. And in there as well, I've got the new compact level light bed chair. So altogether, some of the smaller things in the Tracker range, it all comes together perfectly. If you're a short session angler, you're looking for something that's a brolly and a little bit more, that's it behind me. Okay, time to talk to you about casting styles. Now, getting the lead out there is vital. So there's a few different methods that I like to use. One of the easiest ones for you to master, it's not the most perfect one for extreme range, but it's good for long range. And just to give you an idea of how you do that one, you have about half a rod length drop with the lead. So you want to line it up with the spigot on your rod, and then quite simply swing the lead out. And then as you do that, it will swing back over your shoulder. While you're doing that, you need to put your weight on your back foot. And as you go to pull the rod through, accelerate with your weight going onto your front foot as you pull the rod through. The important thing to remember with all long distance casting is to keep your arms nice and straight. Your right arm needs to be straight and your left arm that pulls through at the start. It's like a lever, if you like. And the straighter they are, the greater the casting arc. I sort of briefly mentioned weight transfer, but that is a very, very vital part of casting a long weight. If you don't use your body in the cast and leave it all just down to your arms, you will achieve nothing. It's like a boxer with a punch. It all comes from the body, you know. The more you can accelerate through your legs and your backbone and your spine and your core, the more pace you're going to get through the blank of the rod and get that lead and that blank moving through the air fast, and that's what you get the distance from. Casting style number 2, now that's one I've used for a long time, and what I like to do there is actually hold the rod up at a slight angle over my head, and again, half rod length drop is ideal. That'll always help load up a variety of rods because you've got a real good pendulum there as it swings back. And as I do that, the weight goes on the back foot, the rod gets lowered down, and once I feel like it's at the right angle, I then step forward, a big step forward, and pull hard with my left arm, straight arms once again. And that is a brilliant way to fish accurately for ranges up to even maybe 140 yards. But I tend to use it for sort of that fishing between 120, 130, maybe a little bit more. And then finally, the ultimate casting style, if you like, it's the one that I've started to use while spomming this week. This is the one I like to call the animal cast. It's almost stood up with your feet side by side, and rod will sort of sit parallel to the floor or just at a slight angle. Blimey, this is livened up. And as you're doing that, you will start to slowly sort of sway forward and backwards on your feet, but you let your feet stay side by side. Then this is where the power comes in. You have to then step forward, take one step, then another step, and as you do that, the spom or the lead will swing away from you, and that is where you pull hard with your left hand. You want to kill the rod at this stage and just pull it through, right arm stays straight, and just the whole lot, and you'll see the difference. That is where you see the big casters achieve amazing distances. It's like a crazy walking overhead thump. If it doesn't work the first few times, don't feel down, just keep going. It's like anything, you will get better and it will come. And you'll be catching carp like this, hopefully, very soon at range. Well, we're into another Croatian animal, another blistering take. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the hardware that I'm using. To start with, the bit that's sort of starting to bend double, the rod, the all-important part. Now this is a Daiwa Infinity DF X45. Now you may not have heard that before, but the X45 element is basically the same material that's used to make up the rod that's just above this in the range, the Basia. And what they've done, they've added some of that into the midsection of the rod. What that does, it makes that part stiffer, but more importantly, much quicker to recover. So when you're going for a very, very long cast, as we are on this trip, from when you're hitting the lead and you see the rod bending and coming to full compression, it's very quickly snapping back to allow a much straighter run for the line to go. So it's, it's allowing you to cast that bit further. In addition to that, it's got the new Minima rings, and as you can probably see, they're much thinner than most rings you see on most rods these days, and that's doing two things. It's making the overall weight of the rod that much lighter, but also it's lowering the amount of friction on the line when it's passing through. There's less surface area for the line to touch, which once again allows you to cast that bit further. This particular model is 13 foot 3 3/4, so it's an absolute animal, but as you can see now, there's still plenty of bend in the rod when it comes to actually playing the fish.
It is going to be available in 12-foot version, but it's certainly one to look out for. Right, next up is the reel. Now, you've all seen a Bezier before, I'm sure. They've been around for a long time. But what about the chance to design your own? Well, that's exactly what you can now do with a new scheme by Daiwa, and you can quite literally customise your own Bezier reel. Now, I'm a bit of a tackle tart, there's no hiding that, but when you look at this, I'm sure you'll agree, it looks like an absolute thing of beauty. I've gone for the silver body, I've got the black spools, but I stay traditional with a wooden handle. I think you've got to myself. But trust me, if you have a look on the Daiwa website, there are so many different options. You can have hours of fun, but ultimately have your very own fishing reel. How about that? I've actually opted to fish with a tapered mainline. Now, the bulk of it is still very thin, 0.30 millimetre, which is a 10-pound breaking strain, so it allows me to cast those long distances. So the last 10 metres of the line actually taper right through to 0.50, which is 40-pound breaking strain. Now, that means I can cast as hard as I want to, knowing A, that my line's not going to snap, but B, I've not even got to think about a leader knot going through the rings and possibly causing a crack off, something I much prefer. Now, some people have said in the past that, yeah, if it's tapered one end, that's great. What if a fish goes into a snag? Could happen, could fray it up and you may have to cut it off. But don't worry, it's actually tapered both ends. So should that happen, you can simply reverse it onto another spool and you're still ready to go again. A much better option in my opinion. That's exactly the same as how I fish in England when trying to fish at similar ranges to this. 30 wraps, 120 yards. Certainly caused me no problems at home. And I'm happy to say it's causing me no issues out here whatsoever. And we are about to get another lovely Croatian common corker to kiss the back of the net. Well, how about that? An absolutely cracking common of just under 35 pound that was caught using very balanced tackle to get to the range that looks the part as well. First bite of a beautiful morning. This one's come to the crank ready rig in a size 2. Confidence in a packet. They're not, they're not being sharpened, they're being used straight out of the packet. A 20mm wafter hook bait on. Lots of people attempt to tie their own rigs and in some cases get it completely wrong. If you're unsure or you've got any doubt in what you're doing, I hope this goes some way to show you that our ready tied rigs are tied to perfection. And as you can see, clearly do the job. Oh, get in. Here we go. 2 more rigs ready to do battle with a couple more monsters, hopefully. So first off, we've got a mainline IB wafter in 18mm that's been soaked and prepared in a new bumbleberry goo. Now, as I said, it's a wafter, it's critically balanced, so basically the hook's going to sit flat on the bottom with my bait just wafting above it, just a succulent mouthful of taste that the carp just cannot resist. The first rig is a crank, which is the name of the hook, ready tied, and it's tied to the camo-coated hook link in 30 pound. And that's, it's very stiff. It gives it, with a critically balanced bait, it allows the lead to land first and then slowly pushes its way down to leave a nice flat rig laying on the bottom. Now onto the hook itself. Now this is Tom Dove's brainchild. It's kind of a cross between the wide gape hook, the curved shank hook, all rolled into one, but also incorporating, if you like, the circle hook technology that sea anglers have used for many years. And the reason they use it is because once it goes in, it doesn't tend to come out. And I have to say the crank itself is a hook that I use for my UK fishing more and more, almost exclusively now, and the hook to landed fish ratio is very, very pleasing and very, very high. There's a slight break in the coating here. It's a plastic coated braid, and there is a slight break to give it that little bit of movement and to allow it to snag and stay in place. The second rig I'm choosing to use is one made famous by my boss. Now, it's the IQD rig. Lots and lots of people have caught many, many carp on it, and I have to say, you know, Dan has used it almost exclusively for quite a few years, and I can see why. Now, it incorporates a size 2 curve, so again, a very big hook, same as the crank, because we've got very, very big fish in front of us and we want it to go in and stay in. So on here you can see a large D, which is what my bait is actually attached to via a very, very small swivel. You don't thread it on in the traditional way, sort of threading it onto a hair. The rig itself comes supplied with some small bait bands, which you pull through with your boiling needle. However, when fishing at ranges like this, I've noticed that it's stretching the band a bit too much, and when fishing at 120 yards, it could ultimately snap. Now, I don't want to sit here not having a bite thinking my bait may have come off because my hair stop's then not in place. So I'm doing it the more traditional way. I'm threading a bit of bait floss through the swivel, pulling that through with a boiling needle, putting a hair stop in, then tying it off with a couple of granny knots, then just burning it and blobbing it with a lighter and just touching it down, and that's basically staying in place however hard I try to cast it. Now, back onto the D. What that's doing is it's allowing the bait to have more separation from the hook when the carp picks it up. We want it so that it's splitting up as much as possible to allow that hook to snag in its mouth that much quicker. The material itself is made of IQ2 in 20-pound breaking strain. Once again, very, very stiff, and with a balanced hook bait like we've got, it pushes away nicely from the lead. Now, fluorocarbon has the same light refraction as water, so for all intents and purposes, it is invisible. Now, tied off at the end, different to the original rig, which has got a small loop, as you can see, this is tied to a size 8 ring swivel, and that movement is absolutely paramount to stop getting tangles. And when fishing at this sort of range, I need to have that in my armoury. And then finally, on both you'll see I've got a simple leg clip set up with some dark matter tubing as well. Once again, just when this rig's flying through the air, it's just going to bounce off of it, so I know it's going to be on the spot without any worries. So there we go, they're the rigs I've decided to use. Very aggressive hooking potential, and equally important, great anti-tangle properties.
Right, leader knots. Now, this is a vital part of long-range fishing. If you get this part wrong, you're in trouble. I rarely use them, but when I do, it's normally in clear water. If you're fishing weedy lakes, I tend to avoid a knot between the rig and the main line, okay, just because it gives the weed something to grab onto. But in this situation, it's absolutely ideal. I'm joining 30-pound sinking armour cord to 10-pound touchdown. What you do, you first put the braid and the mono parallel to each other. You then tie a little free turn grinner in the shock leader, okay, slowly draw that down over the mono, and then with the monofilament on the other side, I make a small loop and just pinch it, okay, and then I whip around the body of the armour cord 7 times and then 4 times back down towards that loop that I've pinched. I then put the tag end through that loop, wet all of it, and very, very slowly draw it all down until it's tight and neat and looking like a little carrot. The reason I like this knot is because it is actually tapered. It is a tapered leader knot, and it runs through the rings quite silently. That free turn grinner, if you like, at the other end is just merely the body of it to bed, like a wall. And that's what I love about it. It flies through the rings, it's quite easy to tie, and once you get it down and you're pulling it down and getting it bedded perfectly every time, it looks beautiful. Now, onto the actual marker and spod rod leader knot. In this situation, I'm joining braid to braid, okay? I like to use the 50-pound armour cord, and then I've got either the marker braid or the spod braid. So what I do, again, run the 2 lines parallel to each other, in this case, both braids. With the thicker one of the 2, I make a 4-turn grinner, so the 50-pound armour cord, okay, against it. So it goes around and under through the braid each time, 4 times. And then with the thinner braid, in this case the marker or the spod braid, because it's only a 20-pound breaking strain, it's a lot thinner in diameter, I then make a 5-turn grinner. Again, don't bed them down totally, just pull them relatively tight, but not so they're pinching against each other, and then slowly pull it all together, make it nice and wet, and you'll pull it down, and you'll notice with that knot it goes down to absolutely nothing. It's a tiny little knot, and again, it's all about making it small and compact so it flies through the rings of the rod with ease. If it's clattering through, you're going to get crack-offs, you're going to get wind knots. Absolute nightmare. This looks absolutely perfect. I'm going to get the rig together and get this fired back out into the swim. Beautiful.
Well, there we go, 3 rods back on the money. But before I put a few spods of bait out to try and entice another whacker, I just want to talk to you about my setup and my indication. Now, to start with, you may be forgiven for thinking that I've got single bank sticks out, but they're not. What we've actually got is the new single system. In the ground here is a long spike, which has given me the rigidity that I need for this demanding sort of fishing. Now, as you can probably see, or in case you can't, this ground is like concrete, it's like granite, and it's almost impossible to get the bits and pieces in. So this sort of situation, we've actually created a Tommy bar. You screw it into the bank stick, you really jiggle it about, get it in the ground until you're happy, until it's about 9/10 of the way in. You can even tap the top of it with a mallet if you need to. Now, there are 4 different widths of buzz bars. I've actually got the middle 2, so obviously there's other options available dependent on how you like your setup, the splay that you like. For me, this is perfect. As you can see, I've got big pit reels. Gives me enough room so I'm not struggling to pick up a bite. If I'm fishing locked up, I don't want to worry about picking up one rod and them all going everywhere, which is a common problem when you do fish them too narrow. The bank sticks themselves are also adjustable. So you may have noticed here, I've got this one up just slightly. The ground is not quite even, but it ensures that not only is my setup absolutely rock solid, but it's nice and level too. A key fact, I'm sure you'll agree. Up next is the Delkin bite alarm. Now, I've used them for a number of years. In this situation, there's only one way to use them for me, and that is, I want to know what's going on and when it goes on. So at the on switch, I've got it to plus, which is the plus sensitivity, and then the sensitivity dial, I've got all the way round to number 6. Now, that might sound a bit extreme, but as I said, there's 50, 60, possibly 70 pounders feeding out there, and if one of them even nudges my bait, I want to know about it. When it comes to night time, I actually turn the volume off on the heads. I've got my sort of wireless sounder box right next to my pillow, so should I get a bite, I can be out here straight away. And finally, the Elstow bobbin, massively important as well. Unlike other bobbins, it actually sits semi-fixed to your main line. You've got a wire clip here that's coated in plastic, and as you'll see, it clips tightly to my line, not causing any damage, obviously. Doesn't have the ball clips like other bobbins that are available. Sometimes if you were to get a drop back, that could sort of fall and the bobbin actually slips through the line, causing less registration on the bite alarm, not with a stow. As you can see, that no matter how finite I move it up or away from me, it picks up every movement. And ultimately, when you get a full-blooded take, it simply falls off as well. Absolutely fantastic bit of kit. Finally, there's no system complete without your lucky mascot. For me, it's me PG Tips monkey. He's been with me for 8 years. I'll be absolutely lost without him. And when he's in place, it's just a matter of time before they start singing.
If I was to give you one big pointer to take away from this masterclass, it would be to practice. If you don't practice, you will not improve at long distance casting. Even for me, even throughout this week I've improved. So if I'm improving, then you're going to improve. It's just a matter of getting the rods, getting used to them, working different techniques, and the more you do it, the easier it'll get and the more confident you will get.
Or usually when I've got a session plan where I know I'm going to be fishing at extreme distances, even over 100 yards is a long way, I tend to try and go to a venue back home that I know I can get that sort of fishing in, because as the saying goes, practice makes perfect. As this session's progressed, the further I've gone into it, I'm hitting the clip more first time, the spom's going out first time every time, but it's taken a bit of build up to it because I didn't get practice beforehand.
It's really important to wet the line before casting out, because I think every little bit of lubrication on the cast does help. Everything goes through smoother, and that really does help. Dry line, not the one.
This lake is it's a little bit special and a little bit unique. We've caught a lot of fish already with a bit of time still to go. I think the key fact that we've really learned is if you don't keep feeding them and give them a reason to come back, you just stop catching fish. You need to ring that dinner bell.
Even though there's loads of fish in here, it's important that every time you cast out, you land on the honey spot. A couple of yards to the left and you fall into the deeper water, you don't get a bite. A couple of yards to the right, it just isn't as good. So making sure you hit those same skyline markers time after time and the clip well is vital.
Since I've been here, I've had to tighten up on my casting, and now I feel that from when I started, where I was struggling to hit the clip, I'm now hitting it on a regular basis, and only the odd one, when you don't take your time, you've really got to take your time on every cast, and as long as you do that, I'm hitting the clip every time.
Even with the experience that I've amassed over the last 20 years or so of carp fishing, one thing before I came here that I wasn't confident doing was casting a very, very heavy spot. And that is what I'd say I've honed in the last few days. I've really worked on my technique, I've thought about it, I've improved my concentration level, and now I'm confident. I feel like I'm ready to take the next step in my casting, you know. I was happy casting at like 120 metres and that, and now I feel like I could do 150. That's the confidence I've built just for a bit of practice and honing it. I'm going to clip this one on because this line settled well. I got to use these for the first time last year in Italy, and at the time they were just a 3D prototype that Del Romang had provided me with, and at the time I thought, blimey, these look weird, but I really did like them. In the end, I'd sort of fallen in love with the unique look that they have, and now that they've been manufactured, they're available, mass market, I think it's brilliant. And I'll talk you through the different components. So firstly, the slim light indicator itself. It comes with a patented magnetic roller, if you like, ball bearing clip, but also you can fish it two ways. So you can have it running like this in the ball bearing clip, or similar to a stow with a sort of line gripping clip, you can do it like that and just push it down into that slot. So that's where if you're slack lining, it'll be perfect because you can kind of grip the line, you can have it tight from the reel, slack from the bobbin outwards, loads of different options. It's ultimately a very variable setup, and that's what Del tells me. It's not just for carp anglers, okay? If you're a barbel angler, you're fishing for tench, anything, it's really, really sensitive, and that's what he tries to drum into everyone. It's something he's very proud of, and I can see why, because I've really enjoyed using them, and this week in particular, they've had an absolute caning. And look at this wind coming in, because that leads me on nicely to this next component on it. It's actually called the slim carb, and it's the stabilizer for the bobbin itself. Now, if I'm honest with you, I don't know why you wouldn't use it without them, because for all intents and purposes, I think that's what not only gives it the unique look, but absolutely no false bleeps when you use it. Got a big wind coming in, and honestly, when I get a bleep on these rods, especially this week, with the amount of fish out there, I know there's one hanging on the end, and that's what I love about them. No movement whatsoever, they look sexy, and this is the other bit that I like. I love the way that it all runs up and down that system, okay? And then the final point is that this will actually stay on the line until the strike. The stows that I love as well will actually come off on the take. These ones, if you see here, look, will pull forward, and you've seen loads and loads of takes throughout this week. They stay on until you pick the rod up and strike into the fish. Now, if you do want to use them bobbin style, you can, but this is another important feature. Not only is the fact that the material is a unique sort of opalized plastic that spreads the light, giving you a real sexy effect throughout the day and night. They've also got a reinforced cable inside here, so to take them out of the jack socket that plugs into the plus system, remember that these illuminated bobbins only work with the plus Delkims, okay, because there's no battery required, it all fits in there, and it's all basically powered by the battery in the actual Delkim body itself. But the reinforced cable, look, and that's what Del says, pull from the bobbin down and it comes straight out and really easy to use. Some of the other things that come complete in the sim light indication set are these little C-slot weights, really easy to put on. They just screw on and screw off, and obviously the slot allows you to just put them onto the cable. They come in 3, 5 and 10 gram. I'm using the 3 gram. I wanted a little bit of weight when I'm fishing at distance, and that leads me on perfectly to the Delkim itself, okay? When you're fishing at range, it's important to set them properly, using the right level of sensitivity. This line's had plenty of time now to get set. So if I clip them both on, they're always on plus at this sort of range. I like about a volume 3, and I've got them on sensitivity free, and I've had absolutely no false bleeps all week, just takes. So look, a little bit of movement and just enough. And again, same with drop backs, forward and back, absolutely perfect. But less tech talk, there's fish in my swim. I need to get a spot out and see if we can get another bite on these little babies. Right, you're working? Yes, you are. Right, bait time.
But conditions have changed quite a bit this morning. As you can see, we've got no beautiful blue skies. This took a distinctly autumnal twist, and there was a real chill in the air, plus a bit of rain, which is why I'm donned in my new Elements jacket from Tracker. Nice carpy green, I think that's one of the most important things first of all, but the technical things that I suppose what make you want to go out and buy a jacket like this. It's breathable, so yes, you're going to get warm in it, but you're going to be the right warm, you're not going to be all sweaty and horrible. It's 100% waterproof, and trust me when I tell you that. I've put that to the extreme test. It's got nice chunky YKK zips as well, so on a cold day when you're trying to do it up, there's no fumbling. It's positive, they're not going to break. It really is really good quality. These side pockets have got a nice fleece lining, so when you are doing a winter day's fishing, you get nice warm fingers. Really good bit of kit. Come on. Oh, get in. Oh, a dry angler and a wet net, the perfect combination. Look at the length of this one, 30 pound 8 ounces, a glorious common, and another one that succumbed to the new bumbleberry goo on an IB wafter, all attached to an IQD rig. This week I've been fishing under the Tempest composite bivvy. Now, for all intents and purposes, it's exactly the same as the original system. You set it up exactly the same way, it's still got the same great mechanism that keeps it so sturdy. All you do, it comes supplied with a ground sheet, which you lay out first and foremost. You then unfold the legs, clip them in together, and do that beautiful fanning mechanism. Once that comes out, you simply pull the bars over, and it's more or less ready to go. Simply clip the two eyelets from the inside to give it the shape and the rigidity, and once it's all pegged down, you're quite simply ready to go. It's got a permanently attached door. It also comes supplied with the 36-inch quick sticks here to give it that extra support. The door itself has dual zip, so when it's absolutely pouring down outside, but you still want to see what's going on, you can have that quaint little letterbox opening, so you can still see your rods and see if there's any fish showing over your spots. And finally, in here, I've been sleeping on an RLX flat 6 bed chair this week. It's been very comfortable, but I've got a nice little addition as well. I've got the new mattress topper. Just gives me a little bit more comfort, but more importantly, a little bit of extra warmth as well. But as you can see, the light's fading and I'm gagging to get my other rod out. See you later. This feels like the biggest fish I've hooked this week. Even from the take, it just felt heavy. The whole way in, it's felt heavy. Now I can see it. It looks heavy. Get in! Look at that. The end of the trip is very close. This may turn out to be my last bite from Croatia, and what a way to finish. 51 pound, led me a merry dance. I'm over the moon. Back you go, mate. Mwah.
A chunk, I think. It could be just a long, lean fighting machine. That's a head. That's a head shake.
It's leading you a merry dance, mate. pound for pound though, they seem to be some of the hardest fighting fish I've ever hooked. They just do not know when to give up.
This is big, isn't it?
It's got to be.
It's got to be big, man. Yeah, that's a biggie. Oh, yeah. Is it a big one? Yeah, it's a big
it's
one.
pretty wide, mate.
Be a lovely way to cap the long range masterclass. Oh, yeah. Go on, son. Yeah. Go on, we're in.
Well
Is
done,
it
mate.
big? Okay.
I'll tell you how big it is.
Yeah.
It's a shade 59 and a half.
59 and a half. Go on, son. Wow. Blimey. Look at that. Speechless, mate. Honestly,
Incredible,
rarely you
mate.
find me speechless, but I am now. Right, let's get back to the water nice
Yeah.
and quickly.
I'll take this side.
Well, if you're going to finish your session, mate, you might as well do it in style. A hat trick of 50s, nearly a 60, 59 and a half, and not only the end of this session, but the end of Masterclass Volume 3. To all the contributors, the companies that have supported us, and of course, the stunning carp. It's been a belter. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you, mate. Back you go.